owner of the US Mega Farmest video is Purimont para intratnamiento wino infringe de recos de autoriales. Los derechos de la novela y la imagen del autor original, no reclamamos propiedad. No te gusta esperar y quieres escuchar este fanfic completo ahora? Suscríbete a nuestro Patreon, donde encontrarás los mejores fanfics. Chapter 401 Passionate. In the end, Kinzu failed to succeed. After being interrupted by Onid, Mobika regained consciousness and ran to the kitchen without Kinzu. Seeing the two girls chattering in the kitchen, Kinzu was relieved and made up his mind again. Exercise, I must exercise. These two women almost killed me. Do I want to live in the future? The dinner was very sumptuous, with 5 dishes and 1 soup, steamed scallops with garlic vermicelli, roasted curry mashed potatoes, French baked snails, vegetarian borscht, and freshly made vegetable and fruit salad. Of course, the indispensable thing is the fried steak. Today, Mobika specially selected the best beef. Just these few steaks cost hundreds of dollars. It's just that now the two girls are with Kinzu, and Kinzu has no habit of treating his women badly, so now the two girls are not so soft-hearted when spending money. Of course, that is also relative to their previous lives, and it is still far from the level of those who spend money like water. Moreover, whether it is steak or baked snails, they have a common function for Kinzu. Replenish physical strength. After sleeping all day, these two women will definitely not be idle at night. I can't embarrass Chinese men. Take them down. I must take these two little goblins down. That night, passion is like fire. 1 man and 2 women, in that small bedroom, on the big bed facing the pink cartoon pattern, tossing and turning. The man's heavy breathing, the woman's hoarse shouting, and the creaking sound of the big bed, gathered together to compose a moving melody. Accompanying it, it was the curses from downstairs and the curses from the neighbors next door. Of course, Kinzu didn't know all this. When he opened his eyes again, he was still the only one left on the bed. Standing up and stretching, Kinzu breathed a sigh of relief. He had decided to go back today. Damn it, if he continued like this, sooner or later he would die on these two women. Kinzu picked up the neatly folded clothes on the bedside and put them on, then walked out of the bedroom. In the living room, only Mobika was eating grapes and watching TV leisurely. Where's Onid? Kinzu turned around and didn't find another figure, so he looked at Mobika curiously. Of course she went to school. Today is not the weekend. Mobika didn't even raise her head, picked up a grape and put it into her mouth elegantly, and explained vaguely. She already asked for a day off yesterday. If she asks for another day off today, the old professor will be furious. Why does this graduate student feel stricter than high school? Kinzu curled his lips, not understanding it. Of course it's stricter than high school. Mobika looked at Kinzu with a weird face. High school is for playing, how can this be the same? Kinzu was choked and speechless. He was referring to the high schools in China. That kind of study environment was incomprehensible to this big foreign horse. Since the explanation didn't make sense, Kinzu stopped explaining and changed the subject and asked, I'm going back to the ranch. When are you going back? Going back so early? Mobika pouted reluctantly, you go back first. I just got here and I want to play for a few more days. Okay. Kinzu agreed, but remembered that the ranch was still under construction. So he said, aren't you going to take a look at the decoration of the river? You were a designer, right? You also said that it's being decorated. Mobika spread his hands proudly, I'm only responsible for the design of the exterior, and Linyu is in charge of the specific decoration. After hearing this, Kinzu could only roll his eyes helplessly, this little devil. Since she was not going back, Kinzu called Dale and asked her to pick him up. Then he embraced Mobika's youthful and energetic body and warned her fiercely. Little devil, you better take it easy, remember that you all belong to me alone. Don't worry, I remember. Being held in Kinzu's arms, Mobika smiled foolishly, and her charming look almost made Kinzu unable to control himself again. Fortunately, Dale came quickly and did not give the two of them time to continue lingering. Okay, I'll go first. Kinzu put down the phone, released his hand that was holding the plump mass, and stood up reluctantly. You should go back early too, and don't hang around outside all the time. I know, you should leave quickly. Mobika rolled her eyes at Kinzu with hatred. She was originally a little reluctant, but she rolled her eyes in anger at Kinzu's words, this stingy man. Didn't I just hook up with your little lover? Is it necessary to be so stingy? Moreover, your little lover stole my woman's. However, Kinzu obviously didn't know her thoughts, otherwise he would have taught her a lesson again. As for how to educate her, is there any need to say? Family rules. After coming downstairs and getting into Dale's car, Kinzu took out his mobile phone and called Christine. To be honest, Kinzu himself felt that since he had money, his peach blossom luck was surprisingly good. It seemed that no matter where he went, he had never lacked women. It seemed that it was really as our ancestors described, as long as a man had money, how could he be without women around him? Hi, Clean, are you back? On the phone, Christine's voice was surprisingly gentle, without the fiery tone she had when they first met. Although her voice was very gentle, Kinzu, who had just crawled out of the gentle country, was still somewhat immune to it. Of course, I'm in New York now. Are you home now? I'll go pick up Shirley. Christine on the other end of the phone asked Kinzu's location and said with a smile, I'll be back soon, you can come over now. Soon, Dale followed Kinzu's instructions and came to the gate of a closed villa community. Christine was waiting for the two of them at the door at the moment. When she saw Kinzu's McLaren driving over, she smiled and came to greet him. Kinzu opened the car door, looked at Christine, who was wearing a black long dress and looked very quiet, and smiled and stepped aside. How about it? If you don't mind, come up and squeeze in. Looking at the half seat that Kinzu gave up, Christine hesitated. She didn't expect Kinzu's car to be a two-seater sports car, and he also brought a driver. But looking back at the villa area, she realized that she had just come here with a friend's right, and it was really inconvenient now. Okay, Clean, then we'll just have to squeeze in first. Christine gritted her teeth and sat in the passenger seat. Unexpectedly, just when Christine was about to sit down, Kinzu showed a smirk on his face, and his body made new movements. Chapter 402. Pick up little Lily back to the ranch. Clean, what are you doing? Christine turned her head and looked at Kinzu, feeling a little embarrassed. It turned out that at the moment she sat down, Kinzu's body, which had given up half of the space, suddenly returned to its original state. This also led to a consequence. Christine, who was unprepared, sat down in Kinzu's arms, and the two of them once again achieved zero-distance contact. Well, I didn't do it on purpose. Kinzu pretended to be innocent and looked at the beauty in his arms. However, his thick hands, were dishonest and touched her flat belly. Seeing that Christine wanted to say something, Kinzu quickly changed the subject. Chris, you come and show the way, Dale doesn't know how to get there. Christine, who wanted to say something, looked at Kinzu at some entanglement, then looked at Dale with an expressionless face, and gave up dejectedly. Under Christine's guidance, McLaren soon arrived in front of an independent three-story villa. Okay, this is it. As soon as the car stopped, Chris opened the door and ran out without waiting for the two to react. Seeing this, Dale's mouth couldn't help but twitch, and she had the urge to laugh. Kinzu's old face turned red at Dale's weird expression, and he coughed twice to ease the embarrassment. Okay, you wait here, I'll go in and get something and come out. Kinzu got out of the car and followed Kristen into the house. The villa is not small, with a garden, a swimming pool and other things, and the building is relatively gorgeous. Of course, everything here can't be compared with the mansion on his ranch. How is it? My home is nice, right? After arriving at the villa, Christine's mood also returned to calm. Seeing Kinzu looking at it curiously, she smiled and explained. The villa area here is a high-end villa area, which is under foreclosed trial management. Many celebrities have houses here. Oh? Kinzu looked at Christine in surprise. So, this is also a place where celebrities gather? Almost. Christine took out the key and opened the door of the villa. However, many people here have bought houses, but they rarely live here. They basically regard this place as a place to stay in New York. The door opened, Christine turned her head, looked at Kinzu's puzzled eyes, and smiled. Celebrities basically follow that crew, how can they have so much time to stay at home? If there is such a day, they will either marry into a wealthy family or retire from the film industry. Well, Kinzu nodded speechlessly and followed Christine in. In the living room, a nanny was sitting on the sofa with Shirley watching TV. After seeing Christine come in, she quickly stood up and greeted her. Christine nodded and said, go and take out the things that Shirley packed a few days ago. After that, she walked to their sofa and sat down. Looking at Shirley, who looked well behaved, she smiled and said, Shirley, Mommy will send you to stay at your uncle's house for a few days, okay? However, to Kinzu's surprise, Shirley did not react at all. Kinzu came to sit on the sofa and looked at Christine with some curiosity. Christine, what's going on? Well, this is already very good, at least she still knows how to watch TV. Christine smiled bitterly and shook her head, meeting Kinzu's puzzled eyes, and explained, before, she had no interest in anything except sitting. Ah, isn't it? Kinzu was even more confused. After several contracts, it didn't seem so exaggerated, right? Standing up and walking to Shirley, Kinzu looked at her cute little face and greeted her with a smile. Shirley, do you still remember your uncle? For 1 second, there was no sound. Kinzu looked at her with an inconvenient smile. For 2 seconds, there was still no sound, and the smile on Kinzu's face became even brighter. After 3 seconds, there was still no sound. The smile on Kinzu's face had turned into a wry smile. Ha ha, Kin, don't mind it. Seeing Kinzu's embarrassment, Christine smiled wryly to help him out. Shirley is just like that. Maybe she will get better after a long time of contact. Kinzu nodded somewhat disappointedly. He had thought that Shirley would still give him face like she did in Jiangnan. Who knew it would be like this? It seems that the old Chinese doctor is really good. Just when Kinzu was about to sit back on the sofa with his head down, Shirley suddenly raised her little head and replied in a childish voice. Shirley remembers uncle. In an instant, Kinzu felt a surge of warmth in his heart, which quickly spread to his limbs. He lowered his head again in surprise, looked at Shirley with a ruddy face, suppressed his excitement, and asked, Shirley, then how about you go back and stay with uncle for a few days? There are big horses in uncle's ranch. How about we go ride the big horses? The answer to him was still silence. But this time, Kinzu was patient. He just stared at Shirley's slightly dull eyes, waiting for her answer. Sure enough, just after Kinzu silently counted 5 numbers, Shirley's clear childish voice reached his ears. Okay, Shirley wants to ride a big horse. This sentence woke up 2 people at the same time. Christine looked at Kinzu excitedly and choked up and said, Clean, it seems that Shirley is still close to you. Kinzu smiled. Without saying anything, he now understood that Shirley was not unable to hear the outside world. It was just that after receiving the outside world, she was slower than normal children in reacting to it by a few seconds. Thinking of this, Kinzu stared at Christine tightly. Christine, I believe that Shirley will return to normal. She will. Yes, she will. Christine murmured this sentence and looked at Kinzu. I believe you. The word believe made Kinzu's blood boil. It has nothing to do with gender or nationality. It is an honor for someone to trust you. Moreover, Shirley is a Chinese with black hair, black eyes and yellow skin. For this reason, Kinzu will definitely find a way to make her return to normal. What's more, she is a cute little lily. Well, you pack up her things, and we will return to the ranch soon. Kinzu stood up, feeling that the atmosphere at the moment was a bit depressing, and showed a bright smile. If we can't get back in the morning, we will be hungry on the road. Christine couldn't help but burst out laughing. With a rich man like you around, how can I still be hungry? No, Gary, you have to know that sometimes money can't be eaten. Kinzu shrugged helplessly. Okay, go pack up, I'm going to take my little baby home. Update Fenxia AI and Langzi's reward support. More. Chapter 403 The Man Who Gave a Woman a New Life. After the nanny packed up Shirley's clothes and some stuffed toys, Kinzu was dumbfounded. Well, looking at the luggage piled up like a small mountain in front of him, and turning his head to look at Christine, Kinzu swallowed his saliva with some difficulty. Chris, I'm driving a sports car this time, not a pickup truck. Well, it seems a bit too much. Christine said awkwardly at first, and then seemed to react suddenly. Clean, you are driving a sports car this time? Then how are you going to take Shirley back? Isn't it simple? Kinzu asked back in a strange way, and then smiled somewhat ambiguously. Of course it's the same as you. Christine patted her forehead in distress, and looked at Kinzu helplessly. Clean, don't you know? When driving in the United States, children must sit in a special child seat. Kinzu was a little stunned. Child seat? What is that? Christine didn't say anything, and pulled him out of the villa. After arriving at the underground garage, Christine opened the door of a Cadillac and pointed to a small seat placed in the back seat. See? This is a child seat. When driving with a child, the child must sit in the child seat, otherwise it will be a crime if caught by the police. There is such a rule. Kinzu was a little confused. He really had never heard of it. However, this is also related to the fact that he has been in the United States for a short time. Perhaps after a while, he will slowly understand it. Of course, and the rules are very strict. Christine spread her hands, looked at Kinzu's indifferent expression, and warned. Clean, I advise you not to hold on to luck. If you are caught in the act, even if you were a millionaire, you'll still be in trouble. Is it really that serious? Seeing Christine's serious look, Kinzu was also a little unsure. Of course. Christine nodded affirmatively. Well, Kinzu was scared. Although he still didn't believe that there would be such serious consequences, it was certain that he would be troublesome if he was caught. And he happened to be the kind of person who hated trouble the most. Well, what should we do now? Kinzu scratched his head awkwardly. There is no place in my car to put this guy, and there are so many luggages. Kinzu looked at Christine and said tentatively, how about I drive a pickup truck to pick up Shirley next time? No need. Christine shook her head. You can drive my car back, and it's just right to carry more luggage. Isn't it suitable? Kinzu hesitated when he heard it. This Cadillac is not a cheap car. What's the matter with suitable or not? Christine looked at Kinzu with a smile. I don't know how to thank you for helping me take care of the children. Besides, you're such a rich man, and you still care about such a broken car. Okay, then I'll be grateful. Kinzu shrugged and agreed. He didn't want to drive the pickup truck to New York again after returning to the ranch. Even if he didn't rest on the way, it would take 6 or 7 hours to drive from the ranch to New York and back. Add to that eating on the way and other things, and it would be wasted on the road, which was not what he liked to see. Christine drove that car out of the garage, and then asked the nanny to stuff the things in. Kinzu also called Dale at the door and loaded some luggage into his 2 McLarens. Boss, what is this? Dale looked at the Cadillac with some confusion. I was saying, why didn't you remind me that children need to wear safety seats while riding in the car? Kinzu looked at her a little depressed. With a child seat? Dale looked at Kinzu a little blankly, and suddenly reacted. Boss, you came here to pick up Shirley to the ranch? Nonsense. Kinzu was a little angry. If I didn't come here to pick her up, what else can I do? You didn't say that. Dale looked a little aggrieved, and complained in her heart. I thought you came here to meet your lover before you left. Although Dale didn't say it, the expression on her face was enough to explain everything. Kinzu became even more depressed. Was he such a person in the eyes of this hot female bodyguard? This won't do. He still wants to win this hot beauty. If he leaves this impression on her, how can he do it in the future? Thinking of this, Kinzu put away his depressed expression, looked at Dale, and began to explain to her the cause and effect of this incident. After listening to Kinzu's simple narration, Dale's eyes changed when she looked at Christine. For such a woman, no matter which country or which nationality, they will admire her from the bottom of their hearts. Okay, Kinzu looked at the female bodyguard whose attention he had successfully diverted, and smiled proudly. Go and help, take the things and let's go back early. Yeah. Dale agreed in a rare and obedient manner. Then she walked over and began to help the nanny load the luggage into the McLaren. However, since the McLaren's body was small, the internal space was even smaller, and there was not much space to put in it. So many things were still piled on the Cadillac. Except for the space in the back seat for the child seat, the entire car was stuffed full. Even on the co-pilot seat, there was a big teddy bear that was more than 1 meter tall, which was obviously newly bought. This was obviously the sequel of Shirley's love of watching cartoons when she was in Jiangnan. Kinzu looked at Christine with a wry smile. This woman was so devoted to Shirley that it was speechless. Noticing Kinzu's eyes, Christine smiled indifferently. As long as there is a glimmer of hope, I will try. Kinzu didn't say anything, but nodded solemnly. This was a man's promise. Soon, the things were almost packed, and Kinzu walked to Shirley, stretched out his hands and picked up the little girl. Shirley, let's go. How about saying hello to your mother? The little girl was silent for a while, then turned her head, looked at Christine, waved her little hands, and said in her clear childish voice, Goodbye, Mom, I'm going to my uncle's house to play. A simple sentence made this woman, who had been under too much pressure, burst into tears. No one knew how much pressure it put on her to have such a child around. Every day when she looked at this innocent and pitiful child, Christine would think of her dead friend. Guilt and responsibility tortured her heart all the time. Now, all this has ushered in the dawn of hope. How could she not be excited and cry loudly? Looking at the car going away, Christine half leaned against the door, muttering to herself, Clean, thank you for everything you have done for me, and thank you for giving me hope for a new life. Thank you for the reward from Langzi. I have grown old without realizing it. Thank you for your support. I owe you 2 updates, which I will make up for later. Chapter 404. Little guy, do you want to defy the heaven? Driving a Cadillac, Kinzu took Shirley and a car full of luggage, followed Dale, and headed towards the ranch. On the way, Kinzu kept chatting with Shirley. Shirley's reaction surprised Kinzu very much. Although she was still a little slow, she always answered questions. If she hadn't always answered a little late, he really couldn't tell if this little girl was different from others. Because the chat distracted some of his attention, Kinzu drove a little slowly. It was not until after 12 o'clock that he saw the ranch path. Shirley, are you hungry? After turning into the ranch path, Kinzu turned his head and looked at the little girl a little embarrassedly. I'm not hungry. The little girl looked through the window with some curiosity at the green pasture outside. Uncle, are we here? Yes, this is Uncle's home. Kinzu looked at the little girl who had obviously become more lively, and asked with a smile. Does Shirley like it here? I like it. The little girl answered very straightforwardly and firmly. Soon, the car stopped at the door of the villa. Before Kinzu got out of the car, he heard several crisp barking sounds from outside. When he opened the car door, Daha and Xiaohe immediately came over with their tails wagging. After not seeing each other for a few days, the 2 guys seemed a little excited. The tails were wagging, and Kinzu was a little worried that they might break. Kinzu picked up the 2 little guys and rubbed their heads lovingly. Okay, look how excited you are. The enthusiasm of the 2 little guys was beyond Kinzu's expectations. He was not careful for a moment, and was attacked by them, making his face full of saliva. You 2 bastards, stay still. Kinzu was so scared that he quickly retracted his head. Fortunately, it was just lipped on the face. If he was, would he still be alive? Just as Kinzu was hurriedly putting the 2 little guys down, Eva, who heard the sound, walked out of the villa. When she saw Kinzu's embarrassed look, she couldn't help but chuckle. Clean, look, the 2 little darlings miss you so much and are so enthusiastic about you. Kinzu smiled indifferently and ordered. Okay, Eva, help me move the things in quickly. Boss, what is this? Eva was a little confused. Did the boss have a child? Kinzu pulled Shirley out of the car and introduced her to Weaver. This is Shirley, she will live with us for a while. Then he smiled and introduced Shirley. This is your Aunt Eva, remember to call her later, okay? Shirley didn't say anything, nodded obediently, and then looked at everything in front of the villa curiously. To her, this place was like a scene in a cartoon. Blue sky, forest, grass, big house, the only thing missing is a big bear. However, there are 2 puppies here, which is not bad. Daha and Xiaohe, who were wagging their tails behind Kinzu, couldn't help but shudder at the same time, looked at each other, and felt that a disaster was about to happen. Kinzu didn't know what this little girl was thinking. He looked at Eva's confused and disappointed eyes, and had to smile bitterly and briefly recount the whole story. After all, as a woman, hearing that the little girl had such a tragic past, the rejection she had just felt disappeared in an instant. With red eyes, he picked up Shirley, and seeing her curious look, he began to take her around the villa and introduced her to the villa regardless of her silence. Seeing this, Kinzu smiled with satisfaction, and then he noticed that the environment around the villa had changed a little. There was no change in front of the villa, the rockery, the fountain, the palm trees, everything was the same. But behind that villa, it was a little different. Because the distance was far, Kinzu didn't see clearly what kind of changes had taken place, but he saw a lot of workers working busy. And from the looks of it, most of them were Chinese. Kinzu was a little curious. Just when he was about to go forward to take a look, he turned around and noticed that there was a large cart of things waiting for him to pack. His face, which was full of curiosity, suddenly became bitter. Turning his head to look at Eva, who was taking Shirley to visit the villa with great interest in the distance, Kinzu guessed with some malice, is this girl deliberately being lazy? Shaking his head, Kinzu threw away the unreliable idea in his mind. Eva is a very hard-working girl. After working for most of the day, Kinzu finally got Shirley's things into the room. Looking at the miscellaneous items, Kinzu's head hurt. Forget it, let the hard-working Miss Eva clean it up, I don't care. After mumbling a few words, Kinzu swaggered downstairs. Grabbing the sleeping little Jerry, Kinzu asked with a wicked smile. Hey, little darling, did you miss me? Little Jerry was suddenly awakened from his sleep, and he didn't even open his eyes. He subconsciously wanted to give this blind guy a claw. However, when he heard the familiar voice, he shuddered suddenly and came back to his senses immediately. His little claws just stopped on Kinzu's arm. Squeak. He yelled at Kinzu with dissatisfaction. Little Jerry jumped and gestured, telling Kinzu's behavior of disturbing people's sleep was hateful and the psychological harm it brought to him. Kinzu was also scared and sweated. He didn't expect little Jerry's reaction to be so strong. The sharp little claws almost cut him a few times. It seems that I can't play like this anymore in the future. Looking at the lively little Jerry in front of him, Kinzu was secretly afraid in his heart. He forgot that this little guy was strengthened, and the power of his little claws was also different from ordinary ones. Okay, little thing, you are not done yet, are you? Kinzu knocked Jerry's little head with his hand. He knew that he was in the wrong, and turned to laugh and teased. Where is your wife? Did she run away with other squirrels? Squeak. Little Jerry stopped jumping, raised his little paw and pointed outside, squeaking happily. Following the direction pointed by little Jerry, Kinzu saw Tom lying on a branch of a big maple tree outside through the French window. Okay, you two lazy guys, Kinzu knocked on the coffee table and educated him with some dissatisfaction. One is sleeping outside, and the other is taking a nap in the house. Don't you know to exercise more? However, what responded to him was a furry tail and a fat back. Kinzu was stunned. Little guy, are you trying to defy the will of heaven? Chapter 405. A fusion of Chinese and Western cultures. Subscribe. However, in the next moment, Kinzu's astonishment turned into a crying and laughing situation. Little Jerry turned around and jumped in front of the fruit plate, picking and choosing among the big apples. Until finally, the little guy picked up the biggest one and ran back again. Kinzu looked at the little Jerry in front of him, who was stuffing apples into his arms, and he had the urge to cry. What kind of squirrel did he raise? He even knew about bribery. Come here and stand up. Kinzu took the apple, pointed at the little guy with his hand, and prepared to start his Kin-style class. Little Jerry stood up obediently, opened his little brown eyes, and looked at Kinzu pitifully. That aggrieved look seemed to say, you have accepted the things, why do you still want to settle the accounts? Originally, it seemed that it would be okay to teach this guy a lesson, but in the end, Kinzu really couldn't stand its pitiful little eyes. After saying a few words angrily, Kinzu was defeated gorgeously. Looking at the big apple in his hand, Kinzu thought helplessly, this seemed to confirm a truth from the side. If you eat someone's food, you will be soft-hearted. Eva took Shirley's little hand and walked in from outside the villa with two little huskies wagging their tails. After seeing Kinzu, he said, Boss, you take care of Shirley, I'll go cook. Kinzu nodded, reached out and hugged the little girl, looked at her big eyes that kept blinking, and asked with a smile, Shirley, how is it, is Uncle's here beautiful? Shirley twisted her little body in Kinzu's arms, and replied in her childish voice, beautiful. After a moment of silence, Shirley raised her little head and said again, Uncle, do you know my father? Kinzu was a little curious, Uncle doesn't know him, why do you ask that, Shirley? Blinking her big eyes, Shirley had tears in the corners of her eyes, and choked up and said, Uncle, you look like Dad, I miss Dad. Kinzu felt a pang in his heart when he heard it. He knew that it must be because of his own affinity that made the little girl recall the past. Stroking the little girl's back, Kinzu comforted her. Shirley, don't cry. Uncle will take you to find your dad in the future, okay? You can play at Uncle's house for a few days first. Shirley wiped the corners of her eyes with her little hand and asked expectantly, Uncle, are you serious? Will you really take me to find my dad? Kinzu was silent for a moment after hearing this, and looked at the little girl with a wry smile. What can he say? Kinzu had no choice but to change the subject, pointing to the two little huskies lying at his feet, and asked, Dear Shirley, look, do those two guys look like Big Bear and Little Bear? Uncle, they really look a bit like them. After all, Shirley was still a child. When Shirley heard Kinzu's question, she was stunned at first, and then Kinzu successfully diverted her thoughts. Kinzu breathed a sigh of relief, and while he felt trust in her, he was also a little strange. According to the situation just now, how could this girl look like autism? Could it be that because of his affinity, she thought they were relatives, so she gradually recovered? Thinking of this situation, Kinzu was pleasantly surprised and a little troubled. The pleasant surprise was that the little girl could return to normal. But this was also a headache. A little girl this old was fine when she was autistic, not crying or making trouble. But as soon as she showed some signs of recovery, she started to make trouble to find her father. What should I do? There were thousands of thoughts in my mind, but Kinzu kept talking and said with a smile, Shirley, look, that's Big Bear, and that's Second Bear, can you go and play with them? Yes. Shirley nodded her head excitedly. Uncle, then I'll go and play with them. Go ahead. Kinzu smiled and touched her pigtails. Be careful, don't fall. Shirley agreed, then slipped off Kinzu's body and squatted in front of the two little huskies. The two little guys who were napping at Kinzu's feet were awakened by the movement in front of them. When they saw the one in front of them clearly, they looked at their little girl with curiosity, and they immediately had a bad premonition. When he saw the little girl dragging the two guys by their legs on the ground, Kinzu turned his head away. He stood up and walked outside, not wanting to look at the two little guys anymore, their pitiful appearance. Amatuba, I'd rather die than die, Daha, shout her, rest assured, I will remember your goodness. In order to stop the little girl from thinking about her father, Kinzu decisively sold out his two pets. Anyway, nothing will happen, at most they will be tossed around by the little girl. At the same time, Kinzu silently said in his heart, little guys, you've worked hard. In order to prevent the little girl from tormenting me, I have to wrong you too. When he came outside, Kinzu ran to the back, but the situation in front of him surprised him. Hey, Mr. Clean, you're back. A pleasant voice came into Kinzu's ears. Turning his head, Lin Yu was wearing a blue canvas work suit and walking towards him. Smiling and greeting Kinzu, Lin Yu pointed to the gullies in front of him. Look at this design, how about it? Are you satisfied? Kinzu looked at the woman beside him, who couldn't hide her proud figure even in work clothes, and asked with a wry smile. What are you doing? Did you dig up the foundation of the villa? No, Mr. Clean, we just dug it out from below. Lin Yu waved her hand, signaling Kinzu to be patient. Besides, we have reinforced the villa. Although it looks empty, the load bearing columns are cleverly hidden. Kinzu heard this, squatted down and looked inside. Sure enough, he saw dense steel bars and load bearing columns, and couldn't help but marvel at their technology and creativity. So, in that case, the river will pass directly under my villa? Kinzu looked at Lin Yu curiously. Although he had seen the design drawings, there were always some differences from the real thing, and the design drawings were a palace on the water. No, Mr. Clean, only half of the river will pass under your villa. Lin Yu smiled and took out the design again, pointing to the design on it, and introduced it to Kinzu. Look, the river comes from here, and then we will build a few pavilions on the river. Then here, we will open a door behind that villa, and then we can go directly from the villa to the river, which is very good for cooling off and fishing. Looking at the design and listening to Lin Yu's explanation, Kinzu was indescribably satisfied. This kind of construction would be the same as the feeling in ancient gardens. On the river, several pavilions and corridors are built with wood. Then some lotus or other aquatic plants are planted in the river. This picture is too beautiful. Seeing Kinzu's satisfied expression, Lin Yu's heart was slightly relaxed. To be honest, after so many years abroad, it was the first time she saw someone building such a thing. But facing the request of such a rich boss, what else could she say? At most, she would despise him in her heart, a mover rich, eh? If Kinzu knew what Lin Yu was thinking, he would definitely cry. I was really wronged. In fact, at the beginning, he really just wanted to build an indoor fish tank. But after Mobika's tossing, it became a river. In the end, he also felt that since the river was built, it didn't matter if there were a few more pavilions. In this way, it can be called a combination of Chinese and Western. Extra chapter for Elder Langzi, 1/2. Chapter 406. The cow is about to give birth. Subscription request. Before Kinzu could ask any more questions, Eva's lunch was ready. Looking at Lin Yu beside him, Kinzu smiled and asked, have you eaten yet? Do you want to eat together? Lin Yu smiled and declined Kinzu's invitation. It was almost 1 o'clock. If they hadn't eaten yet, the workers would have made a fuss. When Kinzu entered the house, he didn't find the lively scene he imagined, and couldn't help but let out a light exclamation. Where's the little husky? Isn't it broken? Thinking of this, Kinzu couldn't help it and quickened his pace to the restaurant. As a result, the scene in the restaurant made Kinzu a little confused. The little huskies were squatting on the ground and eating steak honestly. The little girl was also sitting at the dining table, quietly waiting for Kinzu's arrival. Little girl, why did you let them go so quickly? Kinzu's head was full of questions. He was also a little uneasy. Could it be that if he let them go, they would still come to pester him for a daddy? Shirley is so good, come and eat. Sitting at the table, Kinzu first cut the steak into very small pieces for the little girl to make it easier for her to eat. Thank you, uncle. Shirley first thanked him obediently, and then began to eat the steak slowly. That quiet little look, don't say it, is really cute. But Kinzu was relieved in his heart, as long as he didn't make a fuss. Children are fun to play, but if they make a fuss, it will really be fatal. After all, the little girl is still young and doesn't eat a lot. After eating a few bites, she put down the knife and fork. Uncle, Shirley is full. Shirley picked up a tissue and wiped her pouting little mouth, looking at Kinzu seriously. Kinzu touched his nose awkwardly, a little at a loss. He really had no experience in taking care of children. After thinking for a long time, he couldn't think of anything else, so he had to say dryly, "Well, then go play, don't fall." Shirley nodded obediently, didn't say anything, and got off the chair with a roll. When Kinzu was about to continue eating, he was surprised to find that the two little huskies followed him. What was going on? Kinzu looked at the two little huskies in amazement, and followed Shirley to the living room, and then one person and two dogs sat there quietly watching TV. He raised his hand and rubbed his eyes hard. Yes, a little guy, two little huskies, sat there quietly watching TV. No, there were also two little squirrels. When Kinzu saw little Jerry and Tom running and jumping around Shirley, he felt a little numb. Turning his head to look at the two girls who were still eating, Kinzu couldn't help asking, "Eva, what's going on? What's going on?" Eva looked up at Kinzu in confusion. After she looked in the direction Kinzu pointed, she smiled disapprovingly. "It seems that these guys also like Shirley. You are all very popular with animals." Kinzu was full of questions, but he was choked by Eva's words and couldn't ask any more. "Yes, it's just that the little guy is liked by animals, just like me. But the truth is, can it be the same? I'm the one who owns the system." Thinking of this, Kinzu didn't care about eating. After quickly finishing 2 steaks, he got up and left the restaurant. Coming to the living room, Kinzu squeezed out the big Hector who was joining in the fun and sat down next to Shirley. He looked at the TV. Oh my god, the War for the Planet of the Apes. Turning his head to look at the one person and 4 beasts who were watching TV seriously, Kinzu had a headache. Shirley, do you like them very much?" Kinzu pointed at the big Hectors and the little Hectors, as well as Jerry and Tom on the coffee table. "I like them." Shirley turned her head and looked at Kinzu seriously, and then a slight smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. "The dogs are really cute, and the little squirrel is also very nice to me." "Cute?" Kinzu looked at the big Hectors who was about to become fat like a ball, and smiled helplessly. "Maybe?" After staring at the guys for a long time, Kinzu was really curious. Finally, he couldn't help but grab Daha, brought him to the room, and began to torture him. However, after asking for a long time, there was little effect. The little guy also looked confused. Kinzu could only give up helplessly. In the afternoon, Kinzu didn't go anywhere. He just watched TV with Shirley in the living room. But old John heard that the boss was back, so he ran over in the afternoon and reported on his recent work. Old John held some reports in his hands, with a happy smile on his face. "Boss, many of the cows on the ranch are about to give birth." "Oh? So soon?" Kinzu looked away from the TV in surprise. "I have to say that sometimes these cartoons suitable for children are still very interesting." "Yes, boss." Seeing that Kinzu still had doubts on his face, old John explained. "When we bought this batch of cows, some were already pregnant." Kinzu nodded with relief. "So, we will have milk to drink soon." "Yes," old John nodded affirmatively. "But, boss, if we only drink it ourselves, we will definitely not use so much. We need to sell some." "Sell?" Kinzu touched his nose and motioned John to continue. "Yes, I have contacted a food factory in Revere. When the cows start to produce milk, they will send a car to collect it." Old John smiled happily. Maybe he felt that the ranch would finally have some income. Kinzu's investment in the ranch these days, not to mention himself, even these cowboys are a little stressed. After seeing old John off, Eva also sat over. "What? Is there something wrong?" Kinzu had to move his eyes away from the TV again. Eva looked at the cartoons playing on TV and the corners of her mouth twitched involuntarily. "Nothing, clean, it's just that the grass on the small pasture has been reseeded." "Well," Kinzu nodded indifferently, "then wait a few days for the grass to grow, and move this Angus cow there." Eva agreed. "Boss, don't you want to go and take a look?" Kinzu smiled and held Eva's not-so-smooth hands tightly. "Just keep an eye on it, I'll leave it to you over there, you won't let me down, right?" Eva nodded with emotion, and said nothing, but she made up her mind to make some achievements. Seeing Eva's excitement, Kinzu felt a little funny in his heart. It was just a small pasture. As long as the cows inside were safe, there was nothing to worry about. Uncle, let's go out for a walk, okay? Shirley's words interrupted the somewhat emotional atmosphere between the two. Okay, let's go out for a walk. Kinzu smiled and stood up, signaled to Eva, and took Shirley outside. Chapter 407 Financial Issues, Subscription Request. Kinzu led Shirley and walked on the cobblestone path at the entrance of the villa. The mist of the fountain sparkled like a rainbow in the afternoon sun. Uncle, are there any fish in it? Shirley, who had been silent for a long time, suddenly spoke, which surprised Kinzu. Shirley, that's a fountain, there are no fish in it. He smiled and stroked the little girl's head. What's wrong? Do you like to watch fish? Shirley nodded her head obediently, her expression a little sad. Dad used to take me fishing. Fishing? Kinzu muttered to himself twice, looked up at the sky. It was a little late. How about this, Shirley? Uncle will take you fishing tomorrow morning, okay? Yeah, okay. The sunshine at the end of October, although still emitting dazzling light, is no longer so hot. The temperature in Boston is only more than 20 degrees now, which is just right for travel. The improved version of the purple clover in the ranch has grown as high as the calf after not seeing it for a few days. More than a dozen tall horses were either strolling leisurely or nibbling on the fresher grass. They would occasionally flick their tails to enjoy this rare delicacy. After shaking his snow-white mane, Xiaobai raised his head and looked up at the two harpy eagles hovering in the sky. Since the two guys came, the owner rarely came to see him. They were really annoying guys. Shaking his head, Xiaobai flicked his tail a few times to drive away the mosquitoes around. The grass became fresher and more delicious, but there were a lot more damn mosquitoes. When he lowered his head, he seemed to see two figures. Was it the owner? Just as he was thinking about it, he heard a familiar whistle. Xiaobai immediately raised his head and excitedly ran in the direction of the sound. When Xiaobai left, the horses immediately became agitated, and they didn't care about the food at their mouths. More than a dozen horses turned around and followed him one after another. Hey, man, stop, you scared my little baby. Looking at the Arabian horse running wildly in front of him, Kinzu's heart was also a little hot. However, looking at Shirley's frightened expression behind him, he couldn't help but stop her excited and affectionate behavior. Look, man, you scared our little princess. Kinzu turned around and picked up Shirley. As compensation, you have to run a few laps with the little princess. Xiaobai didn't care at all, and continued to rub Kinzu with his big head. As for the little guy, well, it didn't take it seriously at all. After putting it in the stable, Kinzu put Shirley on it. Fortunately, Xiaobai was very honest. Nodding with satisfaction, Kinzu also turned over and climbed up, and took the little girl to wander around the ranch. Perhaps because she lived in the city since she was a child, the little girl seemed so curious about everything in the ranch. At this moment, there was no longer any tendency of autism, and from time to time she asked a few questions that Kinzu couldn't answer. After a long time, Kinzu couldn't help but sigh that the most powerful person in the world is still an elementary school student. A pure black quarter passed by leisurely, and the knight on the horse sat straight and looked at the two of them. Hey, boss, is this little Shirley? So cute. Hey, little John, what are you doing? Looking at this shy young man, Kinzu was a little curious. I'm watching the sheep over there, said little John, taking out a wreath woven with flowers from behind, showing a shy smile, and said, This is the wreath I made, for our lovely little princess. Shirley didn't say anything, but looked at the colorful thing with curious eyes. Kinzu reached out to take the wreath, helped Shirley put it on her head, and asked with a smile, Do you like it? Reaching out his little hand and touching the wreath on his head, Shirley nodded, indicating that she liked it very much. Little John's originally depressed expression immediately became a little happy. Looking at the back of little John going away, Kinzu secretly sighed that this big boy who had not experienced social pollution still maintained a trace of innocence. When little John walked away, Kinzu turned over and got off the horse and took out his mobile phone. Facing Shirley's puzzled eyes, Kinzu smiled and said, Shirley, be good and don't move. Uncle will take a few photos for you. Shirley was wearing a pink princess dress and a wreath woven from several wildflowers on her head. She was riding on a pure white tall horse and showed a sweet smile. Kinzu was a little dazed for a moment. This smile was so innocent. He took up his mobile phone and took many photos in a row. He decided to go back and slowly choose. After taking a while, Kinzu stopped when he saw that Shirley was a little nervous, and turned over and got on the horse again. When he returned to the villa, Eva was busy calculating something. When she saw Kinzu coming in, she smiled and stood up to greet him. "Oh, my lovely little princess, who gave you this? It's so beautiful." Reaching out and pulling Shirley over, Eva had an admiring look on her face, as if the simple wreath woven with wildflowers was really beautiful. Being praised by Eva holding her little hand, Shirley showed a happy smile. "Aunt Eva, this is a gift from my uncle." "Eva, what are these?" Kinzu looked at some forms on the coffee table, which seemed to be financial bills. Hearing this, Eva pulled Shirley to sit on the sofa and frowned. "Clean, our ranch does not have a dedicated finance and accounting staff. I can still handle it for a while, but when we go to the new ranch, and the cattle and sheep have reached the production season, I will be unable to cope with it." "Finance?" Kinzu touched his nose and thought for a long time. It seems that his ranch really doesn't have a finance department. The cowboys' wages are fixed. Old John sorts them out every month and distributes them directly. Now it seems that it is really not working. "Yes, Clean, we are not a family ranch now, but a large estate with tens of thousands of acres of ranch and hundreds of square kilometers of large fishing grounds. Then what suggestions do you have? Should we outsource it, or should we hire a finance department ourselves?" Looking at Eva's talkative appearance, Kinzu's eyes were full of admiration. Of course, there were some other meanings. It is said that women are the most beautiful when they are working, and Eva is like this at the moment. Although she is wearing just an ordinary cowboy outfit, she looks particularly attractive when she holds that form and faces her gaze with a serious expression. Frowning, Eva thought for a while and said, "This, Clean, I haven't thought about it yet, but I personally suggest that it is better to outsource it. After all, with the current business volume of our ranch, there is no need to hire a professional finance department." Si est escuchando esta novela en un canal distinto a mundo fanfic novelas, significat lo descarga and y subir en cines fuerzos invitamos cordialmente a visitar nuestro canal. Mundo fanfic novelas al encontrar la versión original de esta historia y podrás explorar muchas otras novelas de diversos narradores. Te esperamos para sumergirte en un mundo de novelas incredibles. Chapter 408 How to Sleep at Night. Added two halves. Yes, Kinzu understood that Eva was talking about the finance department, because if they wanted to hire someone, it would not be enough to have a single finance department, they would also need a cashier. If it was more complicated, they would even need some other staff, which would cost a lot. Nodding, Kinzu thought that this was fine, so he said, "Okay, that's it, I'll contact Jefferson and ask him to help me find one." When Eva went back to work, Kinzu asked Shirley to watch TV, and he took out his phone and called Jefferson. "Hi, boss." "Hello." Jefferson's voice was still so respectful. Kinzu nodded with satisfaction. The private lawyer recommended by David was still very reliable. "It's like this, Jefferson, I want to ask if you know any better accounting firms. I want to outsource the finances of the ranch." "Accounting firm?" Jefferson pondered for a moment, then continued. "Boss, actually, as for the girlfriends on the ranch, there is no need to use those more well-known accounting firms. Not only are the fees high, but communication is also difficult after all." "Oh?" Kinzu felt that what Jefferson said made sense. "Then do you have any good recommendations?" "Ha ha." Jefferson chuckled twice, then said, "Boss, we have not only lawyers here, but also accountants." Kinzu suddenly realized, okay, he thought this guy had some good recommendations. "Okay, then you ask them to send someone over." "Okay, boss, let them go over tomorrow." Jefferson hung up the phone excitedly. If this deal is concluded, he will get a lot of commission. Although the ranch's finances are nothing to those well-known accounting firms, they are still very attractive to their local firms. Kinzu knew this, so he agreed readily. It's better to have a familiar person to help watch it than to find a complete stranger, right? After dinner, everyone gathered in the living room to watch TV. Daha and Xiaohe also lay obediently at Kinzu's feet. Although they didn't know what was playing on TV, they smiled foolishly, which must be right. Kinzu looked at Eva, who was wearing loose pajamas and her collar was vaguely revealing a piece of snow white, and felt a little entangled. Logically speaking, he had just taken this cowgirl with a perfect figure, and now it should be time to enjoy it. However, looking down at Shirley, who was nestled in his arms and watching TV seriously, Kinzu felt a little bitter. At this time, he realized how inconvenient it was to have a child around. If she was older, it would be easier to deal with. He could just send her to sleep in a room by herself. But now seeing how attached she is to him, and that she becomes lively only when she is with him, Kinzu can't bear to let her sleep alone. Sighing, seeing Shirley couldn't help but yawn, Kinzu finally made up his mind. Eva, I'll take Shirley back to bed first. She can sleep in my room today. Eva nodded without any reluctance or dissatisfaction, which made Kinzu feel a little frustrated. Damn it, you've been away from me for so long, don't you miss me? Eva seemed to have noticed the changes in Kinzu's heart, and she chuckled and went upstairs with him. What's wrong? Kinzu looked at Eva, who followed him, and asked unhappily. Well, you should accompany Shirley first. While Shirley wasn't paying attention, Eva secretly kissed Kinzu on the face. Hearing Eva say this, Kinzu felt much more comfortable. He hummed twice, and then said, well, then I'll accompany her first, but you wait, I'll find a chance to deal with you. Giving a charming look to this bad guy whose mind was full of that thing, Eva pulled Shirley aside and took her to the bathroom. What are you doing? Kinzu looked at the two women, one big and one small, curiously. Of course I'm going to help her take a bath. Are you going to help her wash it? Eva turned her head and looked at Kinzu with a teasing look. Kinzu touched his nose and said nothing. What a joke. I am too lazy to take a shower myself, and I am helping her. It is better to help you. After all, Kinzu is still a big boy, and he is still a child. He has not adapted to taking care of a child for a while. Although Eva has no experience, she is a woman after all. She is much more careful and considers things more comprehensively than Kinzu. When Shirley came out in her pajamas, Kinzu couldn't help but sigh, what a cute girl. I don't know if the pajamas were bought by Christine for her or she bought them herself. The material is silk, and there are cute cartoon patterns on it. The two cute braids during the day are now scattered and wet behind her. Eva is still wiping her with a towel. Although she is still young, Shirley's black and bright hair is already shoulder length and casually draped on both sides of her shoulders. Especially with her delicate features and rosy little face after bathing, the whole person looks like a porcelain doll, so cute that it seems that it will break if touched. As a Chinese, Kinzu of course prefers people from his own country. Adults are a little better. Kinzu is very satisfied with the big foreign horse's plump and hot figure and open personality. But for children, Kinzu still likes his own people, especially cute girls like Shirley, who Kinzu likes especially. Come, dear baby, Uncle will hug you. Kinzu opened his arms and looked at Shirley with anticipation. Shirley did not disappoint him. After seeing Kinzu's actions, she also ran forward a few steps and threw herself into Kinzu's arms. Uncle, hug me. To her, Kinzu gave her the feeling of a father. Without her father around, she was particularly attached to Kinzu, and only when she was with Kinzu did she have the desire to speak and could open her mouth to speak. Kinzu excitedly hugged the little girl and kissed her twice on her delicate skin. Of course, Kinzu's heart was clear now. He was not a lily control, nor was he one of those perverts from the island country. At this moment, a sense of responsibility as a father surged in his heart, and he also vowed to take good care of this lovable little girl. Okay, clean, you should take a shower too. Eva was a little dissatisfied on the side. Don't stink of sweat all over your body, don't stink the child. Okay. Kinzu laughed and put Shirley on his big bed, then picked up his pajamas and walked towards the bathroom. Seeing Kinzu enter the bathroom, Eva wrinkled her nose cutely. More for the Prodigal Elder, 2 halves. Chapter 409 The Two Miserable Brothers. Please subscribe. She was not dissatisfied with Kinzu, but she was a little jealous when she saw Shirley being so intimate with him. She worked hard to help her take a bath and change clothes, but she didn't say a word. As a result, she was lively and cute next to Kinzu. If Kinzu hadn't said that she was autistic, and she really didn't talk when she was alone, Eva would never believe it. When Kinzu came out of the bath, Eva hadn't gone back yet, and was watching TV with Shirley in the bedroom. Kinzu's bedroom was installed with the Sharp Pounds-1085, which is the world's largest 108-inch LCD TV. This white TV was launched in 2008, including 400 CD/2 meters brightness function, high-definition 1080p picture quality, and also has 1 DVI and 3 HDMI input ports. The 108-inch screen can give people a 108-degree viewing angle. The price of up to $150,000 was indeed the most expensive at the time. But as time goes by, it can only be considered average now. Because science and technology are changing with each passing day, there are already several TVs on the market that are worth over $1 million. Of course, those cannot be called TVs, they can only be called luxury goods. Moreover, these are not the most expensive ones. The most expensive ones are often those customized ones. For example, Kinzu once heard that Bill Gates has such a TV at home. One-way transparent, customized to match his indoor aquarium-style fish tank. Ahem, as for the more than 10-meter-long killer whale in the fish tank, it is nothing. This is why Kinzu has the idea of building a fish tank indoors. In his opinion, this is really enjoying life. However, Kinzu has never turned on this TV since he moved in. Now seeing two beauties, one big and one small, watching with relish, he also became interested. Every day he is either surfing the internet or busy, he really has no time to watch TV. And since the internet has been available, how many young people nowadays will watch TV peacefully? It's true that such an expensive TV looks really different, especially with such a large screen. It looks like being in a movie theater, which feels really good. What is being played on TV at the moment is an American comedy movie. Eva is laughing non-stop while Shirley is also watching it with great interest. But Kinzu is very curious, can this girl really understand it? Or do children with autism understand more? Kinzu doesn't know these reasons, and he can't know them. After watching for a while, his mind is no longer on TV. He is now struggling with whether to use gene enhancement to help Shirley return to normal. According to his estimation, this kind of gene enhancement has only advantages and no disadvantages. Moreover, compared to going to the hospital for surgery, this kind of gene enhancement can not only cure patients, but also greatly improve their physical fitness. But it is an estimation. Kinzu dare not take risks. What if there are side effects? What if there is an unexpected situation? He dare not worry about these things, and he has to worry about them. He even thought about experimenting on himself. But he is also afraid of death. What should he do? Looking at Shirley's face, which was a little too calm, Kinzu sighed inwardly. The next morning, as soon as Kinzu opened his eyes, he was startled by a pair of bright big eyes that appeared in front of him. After shaking his head and waking up, Kinzu came to his senses. It turned out to be Shirley, the little girl. Looking at her, it seemed that she had woken up a long time ago. At this moment, she was lying in his arms, staring at Kinzu with her cute big eyes. "Little girl, are you awake?" Kinzu couldn't help but stretched out his hand to scratch her little nose, and asked with a smile, "Why are you looking at Uncle like that?" "Uncle is so lazy, Shirley has been awake for a long time." The little girl pouted and said with some dissatisfaction, "I said I would take Shirley to go fishing. Are you going to regret it?" Kinzu was a little embarrassed and raised his hand to check the time. "Good guy, it's only 7 o'clock. Sitting up helplessly, Kinzu yawned and asked, "Little girl, do you usually get up so early?" Of course, Shirley wrinkled her nose proudly, "Only lazy uncles will sleep so long." These should have been very cute expressions, but when Shirley made them, they felt weird and awkward. This also made Kinzu's heart once again strengthen his determination to implement the plan in his mind. This plan was only thought of by him after tossing and turning for most of the night yesterday, and it is also very feasible. "Okay," Kinzu smiled and pinched the little girl's chubby face. "My hard-working and lovely little princess, let's get up." When he came to the bathroom, Kinzu found that a small toothbrush had been placed on the sink, probably because it was also prepared by Eva, the well-behaved and careful cowgirl. After squeezing some toothpaste on her toothbrush, Kinzu began to brush her teeth. Because the little girl was not tall enough to reach the sink, she had to squat on the ground and brush her teeth facing the drain. Seeing the little girl squatting on the ground and brushing her teeth seriously, Kinzu inexplicably felt a warm feeling in his heart. Before Kinzu finished his sigh, he saw Deer Husky and Xiao Husky, the two brothers, running in happily. Seeing the little girl squatting on the ground, the two dog brothers came up to her affectionately. Before the little girl could react, they licked her little face. Well, Shirley was frightened by the sudden attack and stood up quickly. At this time, she didn't care about the foam in her mouth. She kicked the two little guys with her feet and muttered, "You two bad guys, get out of here quickly." However, due to the non-standard pronunciation and the communication was not very smooth, the two little huskies who didn't know what was going on were licking the mess, and they kept shaking their tails aggrievedly and kept coming up to show that they were their own people. Now the little girl was also anxious. Would she let people brush their teeth properly? This foam is not comfortable in the mouth. Without caring whether his clothes would get wet, he drank some water and spit out the foam in his mouth. After putting down the cup in his hand, he held the ears of the two little huskies and walked out. The big husky and the little husky were held by their ears by their little master and walked out, looking at each other in confusion. "Boss, what did we do wrong?" "I don't know. It seems that we didn't do anything wrong." "Then why are you punishing us?" "I guess the little master is in a bad mood." Alas, no wonder I often hear the master say that only women and villains are difficult to raise. The two miserable brothers were taken to the corner by the little girl by their ears, and their two front paws were lifted up by the little girl and lay on the wall. "Stand still," the little girl muttered angrily. "If you dare to move, you won't have food in the morning." Thanks to Fengxi, Pangu, and Texi for their rewards and support. Chapter 410 Digging Earthworms, Subscription Request. So, in the eyes of the two brothers who looked wrong, the little girl went back to the bathroom to wash up. Qinzu almost laughed out loud. He didn't expect Shirley to have such a lovely side. Because of this, when he came out, he ignored the pitiful eyes of the two little huskies. There was no way, who made the little girl happy. Downstairs, Eva was busy in the kitchen happily with an apron wrapped around her waist. Today was the first morning that the little girl came here, and breakfast must be rich. When Qinzu brought the washed little girl and the two aggrieved huskies to the restaurant, the table was already full of rich breakfast. Fried golden eggs on both sides, toasted fragrant bread slices, ham, bacon, chicken wings, milk. "Eva, today's breakfast is so rich." Smelling the aroma of food in the air, Qinzu's stomach couldn't help but gurgle. "Wow, our lovely little princess is up." Eva happily put down the plate in her hand, walked over, gently picked up the little girl, and kissed her face hard. "Come on, you must be hungry, come and have breakfast." Eva put the little girl down at the table, picked up the plate and helped her pick up food. It seemed that she was really hungry, so the little girl didn't hesitate to pick up the knife and fork and started eating. Qinzu, who was ignored, had to shrug helplessly and sit down at his seat. Looking at Daha and Xiaohe who were wagging their tails behind him, Qinzu laughed mischievously, picked up a piece of toast and put it in their bowls. Seeing Qinzu's actions, Daha and Xiaohe ran towards the bowl. They were hungry all morning, and finally they had something to eat. When they ran close, the two guys couldn't wait to pounce on the bowl. According to their previous experience, breakfast was either steak or beef bones, and at worst, they could mix some milk. But what is this white thing? Daha stretched out his little paw and reached out tentatively. It's soft and crisp. He put his little nose closer. It's quite fragrant. Then he was no longer polite. Daha couldn't wait to take a bite. Xiaohe, who was watching from the side, saw his brother start eating, so what else could he say? Just eat. As a result, as soon as they took a bite, the two little guys round at the same time. The first reaction was that it was so disgusting. The second reaction was, where is the meat? Facing the innocent eyes of the two idiots, Qinzu was so happy that he didn't even see his eyebrows. He reached out and patted the two guys on the head gently. "Little guys, you have to lose weight. Eat vegetarian breakfast from now on." Suddenly, a wailing sound resounded throughout the villa, and even the workers working outside couldn't help but shudder. After dinner, Eva cleaned up the table and looked at the little girl reluctantly. "Clean, I'm going to the new ranch. You can play with Shirley. I'll come back to cook for you at noon." Qinzu smiled and waved his hand. "It's okay, you go and do your work. I'll cook at noon." "Okay then," Eva didn't insist. She knew that Qinzu's cooking skills were much better than hers. "Come on, Shirley, give me a kiss from Auntie." As she said that, Eva came over and kissed the little girl's chubby face. Although the little girl didn't say anything, she didn't feel disgusted. In her little heart, Auntie Eva, who made delicious food for her, was also someone she could get close to. After Eva drove away, Qinzu turned his head and looked at Shirley who was playing with little Jerry on a sofa. He smiled and said, "Little girl, let's go fishing, okay?" Hearing this, the little girl let go of little Jerry and said excitedly, "Okay, okay, Shirley loves fish the most." Qinzu, who was walking towards the warehouse, stumbled and almost fell. Okay, no wonder she asked if there were any fish as soon as she arrived. He thought it was because Shirley liked to go fishing with her father. It turned out that the little girl was thinking about eating fish. After taking out his fishing rod from the warehouse and packing up a few miscellaneous things, Qinzu took the little girl out of the villa. As for the two little tails following behind, that was necessary. Qinzu was not in a hurry to go fishing. He had to dig some earthworms first. wearing a grey sportswear, carrying a shovel, pulling Shirley, and taking two dejected little huskies, Kinzu headed towards the grove on the side. Next to the villa, there is a small forest, which is densely packed with tall maple and oak trees. Judging from the age of the trees, they are at least several decades old. Of course, the small forest here is different from those small forests where people talk about love in college. Such small forests are not uncommon in the ranch. Shirley's outfit today was specially selected by Kinzu. With his grey sportswear, they looked like father and daughter. Walking on the uneven cobblestone path, the little girl looked at Kinzu curiously. "Uncle, what are we going to do?" "Dig earthworms." "How can we fish without earthworms?" Kinzu didn't even turn his head, looking at the woods in front of him to see where to start. "Oh," the little girl looked confused, "but why do we have to dig earthworms?" Kinzu turned around, "Because fish love to eat earthworms. Uncle can catch fish if he digs earthworms." "Is that so?" The little girl nodded like an adult. "Then Uncle, go dig quickly, we'll feed it to the fish together, and when it's full, we can catch it." Kinzu was ashamed. If he could catch it after it was full, it would be really lucky. Ignoring the little girl's words, Kinzu found an oak tree at the edge of the woods, picked up a shovel and started digging. But to his surprise, after digging for several times, let alone earthworms, he didn't see a single living thing. Strange. Kinzu muttered to himself a few times, and dug down a few more times in disbelief, but still found nothing. "Uncle, did you dig up the earthworms?" The little girl was a little anxious waiting, and came up with a look of expectation. Kinzu was a little embarrassed. "Not yet, Shirley, don't worry, wait for Uncle to change the place. I guarantee you'll dig it up." After that, Kinzu picked up the shovel and took the little girl to walk a few steps into the woods. This time, they came to a thick pine tree. According to his observation, the land here is obviously much more fertile, and it is one of the soils that earthworms like most. When he got closer, Kinzu didn't say anything, picked up the shovel and dug a small hole directly. When he put the dug soil aside, he unexpectedly found that there were still no earthworms. There was a black thing, which was split into two by himself. "Thank you Xiao Langzi for the reward of 500 starting coins, and thank you Fengxiai for the reward." Recommend a friend's novel, Treasure Kingdom, Chapter 411. Fragrant block. "Hey, Uncle, look, there's something there." Before Kinzu could react, the sharp-eyed little girl excitedly pointed at the thing on the shovel and shouted. With a little force, Kinzu dug up the soil and saw a black thing that was cut in half, appearing in front of the two. The little girl looked curious. "Uncle, what is this?" "An earthworm." "It's so big." "No, Uncle doesn't know what it is either." Kinzu scratched his head. He had never seen such a thing. Hearing that Kinzu didn't know it either, the little girl became even more curious. She didn't care about the dirtiness and picked up the thing that was as big as a fist and irregular in shape. Kinzu didn't care. He picked up the shovel and prepared to do it again. He didn't believe that he would not get anything today. At this time, the little girl on the side suddenly shouted excitedly, "Uncle, Uncle, come and smell it, it smells so good." Kinzu turned around with some amusement. The little girl now gave him the feeling that he had encountered some fun toys. "Little girl, what's wrong? What smells so good?" "Uncle, it's this," asked quickly. As she spoke, the little girl held up the black, dirty thing and brought it to Kinzu. "What's so good about it?" Kinzu was a little amused, but before he finished speaking, a refreshing fragrance entered his nostrils. In an instant, he felt as if countless pores were opening at the same time. "What the hell is this?" Kinzu's head was full of question marks. This fragrance gave him a sense of jadoo, but he couldn't think of where he had smelled it before. "Uncle, is it very fragrant?" The little girl's face was full of excitement, like a child who found a good toy. "Well, it is indeed very fragrant." Kinzu nodded unconsciously, and he was still recalling where he had encountered this fragrance. "Uncle, then let's get the other half out, okay?" As she said that, her eyes looked at the half that was still in the ground. Awakened by the little girl's voice, Kinzu came back to his senses and stopped worrying about what it was. Maybe he had eaten it occasionally before. Thinking of this, Kinzu smiled indifferently. "Wait, Uncle will get it out." As he said, Kinzu picked up the shovel and hit the ground hard again. However, before he picked it up, Kinzu knew that something was wrong again. Because he clearly felt that his shovel had dug something again. Sure enough, as he lifted the soil, a black thing that looked like it had been cut was exposed underground. "Wow, Uncle, there are more there." The little girl was very happy. In her opinion, the more of this fragrant thing, the better. Okay, girl, wait, uncle will help you get it out. Kinzu didn't waste any words and waved the shovel again. Around this pine tree, Kinzu dug out more than a dozen unknown blocks of various shapes and sizes. On the contrary, the target this time, the earthworm, was not dug up. Kinzu stuck the shovel into the ground depressedly, and his breathing was a little rapid. It seemed that his physical condition was still not good enough. He had to exercise. Uncle, are you tired? Take a break. The little girl cared about Kinzu considerably. Of course, you must first ignore the two little huskies circling around her and the small pile of trophies. She was so happy watching from the side. Kinzu waved his hand, calmed his breathing a little, and then said, "Girl, let's go. There may be no earthworms here. Let's go to another place." The little girl nodded indifferently, and then looked at the pile of fragrant things in front of her with some embarrassment. Then, what should we do with these things? Hearing the little girl's question, Kinzu waved his hand indifferently. "If you like, just take a few by yourself. It's not a good thing. If you want it, uncle will dig it for you." He didn't want to go home with a lot of unknown things. Besides, there were only 2 of them and 4 hands, and they couldn't take so many. The little girl nodded obediently, looked at the things on the ground with some regret, and muttered to herself, "You have to be good, I will pick you up when I go back." After changing 2 places, when Kinzu was on the verge of collapse, he finally dug up earthworms next to an oak tree. Looking at these earthworms that were extremely ordinary at ordinary times, and even a little disgusting to girls, Kinzu almost cried with excitement. "Damn, is it easy for me? After digging for so long, I finally found you." Kinzu couldn't wait to pick up the prepared container, filled a small bottle, and then he breathed a sigh of relief. "Okay, let's go, little girl, let's go fishing." Shirley, who was waiting a little bored, suddenly became energetic. However, looking at the small bottle of earthworms, she asked in doubt, "Uncle, with so little, can the fish be full?" With the little girl full of doubts, Kinzu returned to the villa. Seeing that she was still holding those black things, he smiled and said, "Okay, put the thing aside, let's go." The little girl nodded and obediently put those good-smelling things on the coffee table. Kinzu had a headache when he saw it, but since the little girl liked it, he didn't say anything. A 4-wheeled motorcycle drove out of the warehouse, and Kinzu smiled and waved at him. "Come on, get on, let's go." The little girl nodded happily, and with the help of Kinzu, she sat on the seat. Kinzu was about to start the car when he heard the crisp barking of dogs next to him. Woof 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 woof. Seeing Kinzu turned his head to look at them, Daha and Xiaohe barked even more happily. They wanted us brothers to run there, but they were dreaming. Although, well, we do have 2 more legs to walk, but this is not a reason for you to engage in racial discrimination. Kinzu felt a little soft-hearted when he saw these 2 guys. Well, it was mainly because their barking was too creepy. If Kinzu hadn't seen them jumping around in front of him with his own eyes, he would have thought that they were being abused by someone. "Uncle, can you let them get in too? They're almost crying." The little girl in the car was even more soft-hearted than Kinzu. She looked at Kinzu pitifully. She was really scared by the barking. Okay, you 2 stop barking. Hurry up." Following the little girl's words, Kinzu called the 2 little huskies to get in the car. After carrying them into the car, Kinzu poked the big husky's forehead with his hand a few times. "You 2 little things, you're obviously the army, but you are so lazy. It's really shameful." No, it's really shameful. Thanks to Brother Tycoon for the reward and votes, thank you. Chapter 412 How to Avoid Catching Big Fish. G6 INI plus T6 OE/4 Y at 6 key $35 beta at and 4 / brace beta at EW4E pounds SMEAH 3/4 SN CEX FNI S4UI equals TOZ E1S at IE. But the panic only lasted for a short while. Under the comfort of the hard-working cowboy and the fearless aura of the mythical beast, they soon regained their composure. Kinzu rode a 4-wheeled motorcycle, brought the little girl and 2 little huskies who had shamelessly come to the car, and came to the sheep. "Hi, boss, good morning." Kinzu heard Locke's magnetic greeting from a distance. To be honest, the 2 brothers Locke and Fed did not leave a deep impression on Kinzu. Just like most ordinary people in China, these 2 are ordinary white people. Probably their fate in life is to live such an ordinary life. "What? Is it your turn to herd today?" Kinzu smiled and greeted Locke. Then he turned his head to look at the endless herd of beautiful slave sheep and said worriedly, "Can you take care of it by yourself? Why didn't you ask your brother to come and help?" Shrugging indifferently, Locke explained with a smile, "Boss, the cattle herd is busier and more important. Besides, with more than 1,000 sheep, I can still handle it by myself." Hearing Locke say this, although Kinzu was still a little worried, he didn't say anything. After all, professional matters should be left to professionals. Just as he was about to turn around and leave, he heard Locke ask, "Boss, is this Miss Shirley? She's so cute." "Yes, this is Shirley, my little niece." Kinzu smiled and nodded, then turned his head and said to the little girl next to him, "Call Uncle Locke quickly." The little girl hesitated for a moment, and finally called sweetly in Locke's expectant eyes, "Hello, Uncle Locke." When the little girl called him, Locke felt that all the bones in his body were softened. He also heard from old John that the boss's niece suffers from autism. He didn't expect that she would still talk to him in such a situation. Well, it seems that he is handsome again. Kinzu ignored the self-absorbed Locke. After saying hello to him, he drove on. His purpose today was to go fishing. It was not until Kinzu and the others walked a long way that Locke came back to his senses. He kept muttering, "She talked to me, she talked to me." Soon, Kinzu once again came to the huge freshwater lake in the ranch. "Uncle, look, there are fish there, so many fish." As soon as she got out of the car, the little girl saw the big cart jumping out of the water and shouted at Kinzu happily. "Well, don't worry, wait for Uncle to get the fishing rod ready." Kinzu smiled and signaled the little girl to be patient and not to fall into the water accidentally. I think they went to the freshwater lakes in the city when they went fishing. Although there are many Asian carps there are definitely not as many as in the suburbs. Especially in this huge freshwater lake, the water itself is unfathomable, and there has been no large-scale fishing for a long time. In this case, the fish in this freshwater lake can be imagined, and there must be countless. After getting the fish hook ready, Kinzu threw the fishing rod into the water and asked with a smile, "Shirley, what kind of fish do you like to eat?" Well, the little girl sat on the small vest brought by Kinzu, holding her chin with her two chubby little hands, thinking for a while, and then said, "That kind of big fish, and that kind of small fish." As she said, she gestured with her hands twice, which made Kinzu puzzled. But Kinzu also knew that asking a child such a question was like asking a blind man. What can the little girl remember? Shaking his head, Kinzu smiled and continued to chat with the little girl, and he didn't forget to check the float from time to time. When they were chatting happily, Kinzu felt the fishing rod tighten suddenly and almost lost his grip. This sudden change scared him. "No way, it's a big fish right at the beginning." Kinzu's guess was right. After he finally got this guy ashore with great effort, he found that it was actually a big black carp with a body length of 1 meter. My goodness, what kind of fish is this? It's so big right away. All the fun of fishing is gone. The little girl certainly didn't know what Kinzu was thinking. She was so excited to see her uncle catch such a big fish. She chirped aside like a sparrow. Kinzu picked up the big fish, but this guy kept moving around. Kinzu, who was strong, could hardly hold it. He didn't say anything. Since it was not honest, he treated it according to the old rules. Now it was much more honest. He looked at the fish and the fishing rod. This one was enough for him to eat for a week. Should he continue fishing? Looking at the little girl's expectant eyes, Kinzu had no choice but to start fishing again. However, he turned on the system at this time. He couldn't do this in the afternoon. If he continued like this, dozens of big fish would be caught before the little girl had enough fun. System, can you turn off the skill effect? Dear host, the skill effect cannot be turned off, but you just need to silently recite in your mind not to use the skill effect. Kinzu was very happy to hear the mechanical voice of the system. According to the system's words, Kinzu silently recited in his mind several times not to use the skill effect. Sure enough, the fish that would bite the hook in less than a minute had not been hooked for 2 minutes. Kinzu felt relieved now. Fishing is about the fun of fishing. If you throw it down and pull it up, it will be a big fish. Apart from pretending to be cruel, there is no other meaning. Although the little girl was a little disappointed that Uncle Kinzu didn't catch a big fish right away, she still sat on the small vest honestly and said nothing. Chapter 413 Truffle. The autumn wind blew gently on the sparkling lake. The lively Asian carps jumped out of the water, turned around, and then dived back in. For them, this place is simply a paradise. Their ancestors came from afar and settled in this strange waters. After billions of fights and wars, they finally unified this strange waters. Now, it's time for them to enjoy life. Of course, if there were no two four-legged monsters on the shore, everything would be more perfect. Uncle, you are so amazing, you caught another one. The little girl clapped her hands red with excitement. Uncle Kinzu had already caught a lot of fish. Compared with the little girl's excitement, Kinzu was a little depressed. Damn, didn't I say not to use skill effects? Why is it still like this? There was no way. There were too many Asian carps in the lake area. Even without skill assistance, as soon as the bait entered the water, it would not take long for the Asian carps to find it. Moreover, for them, there are no natural enemies or dangers here. As long as it is food, what can't be eaten? So when they find food, they don't even hesitate, they bite it in one bite and never let go. Who knows if someone else, oh no, other fish will get there first once they let go. With a crisp barking of Daha, Kinzu once again picked up a catfish of more than 30 centimeters. It's true that dogs have a good memory. Since being slapped by the cod last time, Daha now sees fish as if he saw the murderer of his father, and he barks non-stop. If the little girl hadn't stalked him, these lively guys would probably have given it a lively education lesson. Although I'm not big, it's still a matter of one tail to deal with you, a little guy. Okay, girl, let's go back. It's enough to eat. Putting away the fishing rod, Kinzu looked at his harvest in the morning with a smile. Well, fortunately, the fish caught later were all small fish of 34 centimeters. Otherwise, he would really cry. What if he caught dozens of big fish of 1 meter long? However, if some fishing friends in China knew about his idea, they would definitely scold him. 34 centimeters long is still a small fish. Then of these fish of more than 10 centimeters that we caught considered fish babies. Riding a four-wheeled motorcycle, taking the little girl and the two generals, Kinzu drove back to the villa. As soon as he came back, Kinzu saw Lin Yu, who was supervising on the side, and shouted loudly after getting off the car, "Lin Yu, come over for lunch at noon, I will cook for you myself." Lin Yu, who was discussing something with the workers, looked back at Kinzu and agreed with a smile. Kinzu didn't say anything else, picked up the fish and started to wash it. Because Shirley, a little girl who loves to eat fish, was there, Kinzu washed it very carefully. After cleaning, he used a knife to slice the fish meat one by one. Speaking of Asian carp, the biggest feature, which also left the deepest impression on Americans, is that there are many thorns. For example, black carp, grass carp, and other larger fish are okay, but if it is crucian carp or silver carp, it will be really troublesome. There are all kinds of big and small thorns, and there is no place without thorns. Even the Chinese people who have always been good at eating fish are sent to the hospital every day by this thing, not to mention these Americans who are careless and like to eat meat and fish in big mouthfuls. If you bite the crucian carp like this, it will be sour and refreshing. Kinzu was a little scared when he thought about it. So he sliced the fish more carefully. Although it is a bit troublesome, compared with the safety of the little girl, he is still willing to waste this time. And Kinzu took the big guy, so it was not difficult to slice it. The little girl didn't go to play either. She just squatted beside Kinzu, holding her slightly fleshy chin with one hand, and stroking Daha's chubby belly with the other hand. Hum. Daha hummed a few times in comfort, and his four little paws resisted the little girl's touch. I'm a big man who stands tall and upright, how can I be manipulated by a little girl like this? But it's so comfortable. Xiaohe was so envious and jealous that he quickly followed his big brother's example and lay down on his back, humming and begging for caress and rubbing. The little girl came back to her senses and was amused by the two guys. She didn't hesitate to raise her little hand to pinch her chubby belly. Kinzu sorted the sliced fish into different categories. He was going to make pickled fish with the big black fish, and some were going to be fried fish fillets. As for the sliced carp, he was going to do something new. Coming to the kitchen, Kinzu found lemon juice and red wine, put the fish fillets into a clean basin, poured it in, and then added some salt to marinate. Hey, Clean, what delicious food are you going to make for lunch? Lin Yu, who was wearing a professional suit, with long smooth black hair and a pair of black framed glasses, walked in with a smile. Yes, a full fish feast. Kinzu wiped his hands, gestured to the kitchen counter, then turned his head and asked with a smile. Do you like it? Do you want to add something else? Lin Yu smiled and shook her head. No, it's just right. I also like to eat fish, and there is no sale here. It seems that this time I will have a good time again. Ha ha, I'm glad you like it. I was afraid you wouldn't be used to it. There's no way, our little princess wants to eat fish. As he said, Kinzu gestured to the living room, then go sit in the living room for a while. There's a lot of smoke here, I'll be ready soon. Lin Yu smiled and nodded, looked at the little girl watching TV on the sofa, and many questions were temporarily suppressed. Just as Kinzu was busy in the kitchen and was about to start, a woman's exclamation came from the living room. Hey, Lin Yu, what's wrong with you? Kinzu didn't even have time to take off his apron before he ran out in a hurry. Clean, where did you get so many truffles? Lin Yu stood beside the sofa, pointed at the black lumps on the coffee table, looked at Kinzu in surprise, and asked, do you grow truffles on your ranch? She was really surprised this time. Although she knew that Kinzu was rich, she still felt a little overwhelmed by so many truffles, without processing them at all, and just placed them on the coffee table. This is all money, Green Franklin. Especially these truffles, it can be seen that they were just dug out not long ago. Could truffles be grown here? Thanks to Hexy for the 599 book coins reward. More chapters. Recommend a new book to friends. League of Legends. Eagle Strike the Sky, a very good competitive novel. Friends who like it can go and have a look. Chapter 414. Wine-stained carp, subscription and reward. Seeing that Lin Yu was fine, Kinzu was relieved and said unhappily, what truffle? You scared me. Lin Yu was a little crazy. Brother, don't you know truffles? Before she could explain, Kinzu came to his senses and pointed at the things on the coffee table with a look of surprise. Lin Yu, do you understand that these things are truffles? Lin Yu nodded her head vigorously, not afraid of spraining her neck. It's truffles, for sure. That kind of fragrance, what else can it be except truffles? Kinzu didn't care about cooking at this time. He sat down on the sofa, picked up one and put it under his nose to smell it carefully. It seems, indeed, the same as what he had eaten at time. What is truffle? Black truffle, Latin name Tuber melanosporum, English name Periga truffle, also known as truffle. It is a wild edible fungus that grows underground. It has a rugged appearance, a color between dark brown and black, and is in the shape of small protrusions, with gray or light black and white textures throughout. Its smell is special and hard to describe. Some people describe it as mushrooms, garlic, rotten leaves, wetlands, fermented corn, pickled cabbage, honey, gas, wet straw, cheese, cinnamon, elk, and some say it is like unwashed sheets for years. Some people even describe it as a liquid. Speaking of truffles, many people may know that whether it is on TV or in novels, it often appears as a top-grade ingredient and is listed as one of the world's top ingredients along with caviar. But when it comes to seeing it, many people may not have seen it with their own eyes. As a world-class ingredient, it is of course matched with the high price. Even Kinzu has never seen this kind of freshly dug, but he ate it once in a restaurant last time. Just a few pieces are also worth a lot of money. It is not an exaggeration to say that it is comparable to gold. Kinzu, does your family grow truffles? Lin Yu's expression was eager to try. No. Kinzu responded woodenly. Then what is this? Lin Yu expressed disbelief. Could it be wild? I found it while digging for earthworms. Kinzu also came to his senses at this time. No wonder he couldn't find any earthworms. If it was truffles, that would explain it. Because according to his understanding, where truffles are, the nutrients in the soil will be absorbed by them. How can earthworms, which rely on soil nutrients to survive? So, these are all wild. Lin Yu's expression was full of surprise. She had never seen a place where truffles were produced. Clean, where did you find this? It would be better if you take me to see it. Hearing Lin Yu say this, Kinzu also came to his senses. Thinking of many that he had not brought back, he immediately slapped his thigh. It's bad. I dug a lot at the time, but I only brought back these few. Then hurry up, don't let other animals eat them. Lin Yu acted more anxious than Kinzu, and stood up immediately. Hurry up, Clean, you know, not only do we like to eat these, but animals also like to eat them. When the two hurried to the grove, everything was calm. Come to think of it, this place is so close to the villa, how could there be so many daring little animals approaching? After the two took back all the truffles they found in the morning, cleaned them, and placed them on the coffee table, they had time to sit down. Clean, it seems that you are going to get rich again, Lin Yu said with envy. TSK, wild truffles, come on. Kinzu curled his lips. It's just luck that I found such a few truffles. Do you think they are everywhere? He didn't believe that this place would be another truffle-producing area. It was probably caused by some unknown reason, and some truffles happened to grow here. No, you have a point. Lin Yu dragged his chin thoughtfully. That quiet look, coupled with a pair of black-framed glasses, made Qin Zhu couldn't help shouting in his heart. Glass girl, is it true? But, Qin, don't you try the place where truffles are found? There might be a surprise. Qin Zhu heard the words and came back to his senses from the glasses girl's thoughts and stretched. No hurry, let's cook first. You know, digging is also a strenuous job. After saying that, he got up and walked to the kitchen without hesitation. He now began to miss his new dish again. Lin Yu looked at Qin Zhu's back with admiration. This is what a rich man is. Knowing that there may be a huge amount of wealth there, he can still be so calm. How much perseverance does this require? Qin Zhu didn't know what Lin Yu was thinking, otherwise he would definitely complain about her. How could I know if there was wealth there? In comparison, the stomach is more important. Besides, it can't run away. In the kitchen, Qin Zhu lit 2 pots and cooked some simple dishes first, and then started a new attempt. Speaking of carp, in addition to braised and steamed, Qin Zhu also knows a way to cook it, that is, pickled carp in wine. According to legend, in the ancient Saxon tribe, when eating fish, each fish had to swim 3 times, that is, in water, butter, and wine, before it could be served on the table. Qin Zhu had already pickled the fish in red wine just now, and it was almost done now. Find some fresh fennel, wash it, chop it partially, wash the purple cabbage and carrots, cut them into strips, blanch them in the pot and set aside. Then mix the water starch, pepper, cumin powder, and fennel powder, and then coat the marinated carp meat with water starch. Heat the pan, add an appropriate amount of olive oil, and when the oil is hot, put the carp meat wrapped in starch in it and fry it. Each piece of fish meat should be fried on both sides until golden brown, and then it should be picked up and put on the plate. When everything was done, the time had unknowingly come to 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The 3 beauties, 2 adults and 1 child, who were waiting in the living room, were already hungry. Lin Yu also regretted it at this time. Why did you come here to join in the fun instead of having a good work meal? The little girl was really impatient to wait, touched her rumbling stomach, got up from the sofa, and ran into the kitchen. Uncle, is the meal ready? Shirley is hungry. It will be ready soon, it will be ready soon. Qin Zhu wiped the sweat off his head and picked up a piece of fried carp. My little cutie is hungry. Come on, take a piece and try it first. The little girl was not polite. She took the fish piece and sniffed it gently under her nose. It smells so good. Try it and see how it tastes. Qin Zhu turned off the fire, cleaned up the last mess, and looked at Shirley expectantly. Nodding her head, Shirley gently put the fish piece into her mouth and tore off a piece with her tiny canine teeth. Suddenly, the little girl's originally big eyes narrowed into a small slit involuntarily. Delicious. Uncle's cooking is the best. Thank you Fenxi love, honey is so sweet. Oh, the 3 big rewards and support. In the new week, please recommend and reward. Si estes escuchando esta novela en un canal distinto a mundo fanfic novelas, significat lo descarga and y subir en sin esfuerzos invitamos cordialmente a visitar nuestro canal. Mundo fanfic novelas all encontrás la versión original de esta historia y podrás explorar muchas otras novelas de diversos narradores. Te esperamos para sumergirte en un mundo de novelas incredibles. Chapter 415. Digging for truffles. In the afternoon, in the open-air garden on the 2nd floor, Qin Zhu and Lin Yu sat opposite each other on the reclines. On the coffee table, there was a freshly brewed comfy tea. Qin Zhu. Lin Yu looked at the man beside her curiously, one hand still stroking her lower abdomen. You said you were a billionaire, why do you cook so deliciously? You ask this. Qin Zhu picked up the exquisite purple clay teacup and took a sip gently. In her curious eyes, he opened his lips and uttered 2 words. Talent. Lin Yu, who was full of expectations, almost fainted. This hateful man. Looking at Qin Zhu with hatred, Lin Yu squeezed out a sentence from his teeth. You mean, you were a genius? Qin Zhu ignored the cannibalistic eyes of the glasses girl, and showed a self-proclaimed handsome smile at the corner of his mouth. Isn't it? Okay, Qin the great genius. Lin Yu stood up, she was hit by the man's arrogance. I'll go watch them work. See you later. Is it necessary to be so angry? Didn't I just tell the truth? Qin Zhu looked at the back of the girl with glasses, muttered a few words to himself, and then sighed. In this world, telling the truth is always misunderstood. Lin Yu, who had just walked to the door, paused and almost couldn't help laughing. In the end, she suppressed her depression and went downstairs. Shirley, who was standing by, waited until Lin Yu left, then she held her chubby face with her white and tender hands and looked at Qinzu seriously. "Uncle, you made the beautiful aunt angry and left her." Qinzu was stunned. How could this little devil know everything? "Well, Shirley, let's go dig truffles later, okay?" Okay, let's go dig truffles." Hearing what Qinzu said, the little girl immediately forgot the question just now and clapped her hands with joy. Although she didn't know what truffles were, it didn't hinder her interest in playing. Qinzu raised his eyebrows proudly. What's wrong with the little girl being smart? She was still being led by him. After taking 2 more sips of tea, Qinzu put down the exquisite teacup and went downstairs with the little girl. Seeing Dale sitting on the sofa, he smiled and greeted her. "Dale, let's go dig truffles." "Boss, are truffles really dug out from the ranch?" Dale looked up at Qinzu in surprise. She went to inspect the ranch in the morning and was not at home. She did not see Qinzu digging truffles. After coming back, she heard the female designer say that her boss had dug truffles on the ranch. Her first thought was, how is this possible? However, looking at the admiring look on the face of the Chinese female designer, Dale wisely chose to remain silent. She thought that this was her boss's way of picking up girls. How come, looking at this now, truffles are really dug out from the ranch? Of course. Qinzu came to the door and changed into a pair of dirt-resistant shoes. Looking at Dale's surprised eyes, he smiled and asked back, "Do you think I'm joking?" "Who knows?" Dale muttered, and got up and followed. Hearing Dale's voice, the little girl who had been silent all the time suddenly said timidly, "Aunt Dale, Uncle really dug it, with me." Dale was stunned, and Qinzu turned around and looked at the little girl in surprise. This was the first time she took the initiative to talk to someone Qinzu thought of. "Yeah, Shirley is so good." Dale walked over a little flattered and picked up the little girl. "Auntie is wrong, Auntie believes you." Hearing what Dale said, Shirley in her arms smiled sweetly. Qinzu carried a shovel and Dale held Shirley. The 3 of them went out and attracted Lin Yu's attention. She was about to come over to say hello, but suddenly remembered that Qinzu had deliberately angered her just now. She snorted, turned her head away, and pretended not to see it. Qinzu also saw Lin Yu's reaction and couldn't help laughing secretly. He really wanted to anger this woman on purpose. She was always quiet and elegant, as if everything was under her control. This kind of aura of a strong woman was still very stressful for Qinzu, a poor loser. After waiting for a while, Lin Yu didn't hear any movement behind her. She turned her head curiously and saw Qinzu and the other 2 entered a small forest next to her. Now, she couldn't sit still. What were the 3 of them going to do? Wasn't it obvious at a glance? How could she be missing from such a fun and novel thing? But if she went there like this, wouldn't she be laughed at by the guy? Thinking of this, Lin Yu hesitated again. After all, she was the chief designer of a big company and had never been teased like this. However, thinking that they were going to dig truffles, Lin Yu gritted her teeth. At most, she would be thick-skinned. What was there to be afraid of? She called a few foremen over and explained a few points to pay attention to. Then Lin Yu twisted her waist and walked towards the woods. TSK, Mr. Lin's figure is really amazing. A white man with a full beard looked at Lin Yu's slender back and couldn't help but sigh in admiration. Okay, Pete, get to work. A big man with a similar body shape next to him raised his head unhappily when he heard his companion say that. The wages this time are not low. If you mess up, don't say I'll deduct your salary. Okay, can't I do the work? Pete was obviously a little afraid of his companion. After hearing what he said, he had to start working again in a bad mood. But he was muttering something dirty in his mouth. These damn yellow monkeys are so damn rich. After Lin Yu finished giving instructions, he trotted to follow. Although the forest was not big, it was not too small. It was densely packed and extended directly to the seaside. If you don't follow closely, it will be difficult to find someone later. Fortunately, the woods were not too far from the villa, and she was next to the villa. She hurried and finally caught up with Qinzu and the other 2. However, what made her depressed was that the 3 guys had stopped and started digging next to the tree. She leaned against the tree to rest for a while, calming down her heartache from accelerating. If she had known that it was just next to it, why would she run so fast? Hey, talented Lin, what are you doing? Qinzu saw Lin Yu coming over, stopped what he was doing, and looked at her with a smile. Well, Lin Yu awkwardly lifted her hair, scolded Qin Yu in her heart, but had to show a sweet smile on her face. I just came to see, what are you doing? Qin Yu looked at her with amusement, and did not continue to attack her. After all, he still had a good impression of this girl with glasses. Chapter 416 Chain Music Excitement, additional updates, please subscribe. Of course I am digging truffles. Do you think I'm kidding? Qin Yu ignored her and started to work. Lin Yu breathed a sigh of relief, but didn't say anything. She just watched Qin Yu busy. Perhaps it was because Qin Yu's luck was really amazing. After 2 hours of hard work, although he was sweating profusely, the harvest was also very gratifying. He dug more than 50 fist-sized black truffles, plus some broken ones and some small ones, and harvested more than 100 black truffles. Well, okay, let's stop here today. Qin Yu stopped what he was doing, raised his arm and wiped the sweat off his face. It must be said that this was really a physical job. Lin Yu followed behind to help pick up the truffles. Her waist was a little sore from tiredness. However, looking at the big bag of black truffles and the large forest, she couldn't help but sigh. Qin Yu, you're really rich. How many black truffles are there? How can there be? You can see that there are not black truffles under every tree. Qin Yu looked at the area he had dug, then looked around and said depressedly, I guess this area is almost dug. Hearing what Qin Yu said, Lin Yu and Dale also looked back. It seemed that it was true. Back at the villa, Qin Yu sent Lin Yu and Dale to wash the truffles, and he took Shirley back to the living room. Hey, I'm a guest after all, okay? Lin Yu looked at the backs of Qin Yu and the others depressedly, stomped her feet in hatred, and finally followed Dale to wash the truffles helplessly. Qin Yu returned to the living room and took out his mobile phone to call Chen Mu. The phone just rang twice, and Chen Mu's hearty voice came from it. Hello, boss, please tell me what you want to say. Brother Chen, I don't have any instructions, Qin Yu laughed. Chen Mu was used to staying in the United States, so he became straightforward. I just want to ask, does our restaurant need truffles? Truffles? Chen Mu asked back with some doubt. Yes, black truffles. Of course, boss, do you have a sauce? Chen Mu was really excited. Which Western restaurant doesn't need truffles? But the sauce is so small, and it is controlled by the French. He can only buy some from truffle merchants every month, which is not enough for the restaurant. Sauce. Qin Yu muttered, thinking of the small forest. I don't think I have this. Just when Chen Mu was a little disappointed, he heard Qin Yu continue. But I have a lot of black truffles in my hand now. Really? How big? How many? Chen Mu's heart came alive again. No matter where the boss got it from, it's fine. More than 100, all the size of a fist. Do you want to come and have a look? Of course, boss, wait for me, I'll be there soon. After saying that, he hung up the phone in a hurry without waiting for Qin Yu to speak, which made Qin Yu a little depressed. Forget it, since he was doing it for work, he won't bother with him. Otherwise, if he dares to hang up their boss's phone, he will definitely scold him. Although he knew that Chen Mu would definitely be very positive, since he knew that this was a black truffle, Qin Yu knew that Chen Mu would definitely like it. But the speed at which he came was beyond Qin Yu's imagination. Only 40 minutes later, a black Mercedes-Benz stopped at the door of the villa at lightning speed. The car door opened, and Chen Mu, who was dressed in a black suit, rushed into the villa in a hurry. When he entered the door, he almost stepped on Daha's little tail. This scared Daha, and he tucked his tail and moved closer to the little girl. I'm just basking in the sun, do you have to? The world is too dangerous, let's go and play with the little master. Boss, where are the truffles? As soon as he entered the door, before his butt even touched the sofa, Chen Mu couldn't wait to say, bring it here so I can see what grade it is. Qin Yu pointed at the coffee table indifferently, and then continued to drink and started arguing with Lin Yu beside him. He found that this girl with glasses was really interesting. You say she is carefree, but she gives people the feeling of being strong and cold. You say she has a cold personality, but she gets angry easily. You say she has a stingy personality, but she can quickly forget what happened just now. So Qin Yu found it particularly interesting to tease her. Chen Mu followed the direction of Qin Yu's finger and saw several baskets on the coffee table. The baskets were full of black truffles that were still shining with water. Who dug this? It's a waste of natural resources. How could it be like this? Just after coming back to his senses from the shock of seeing a lot of truffles, Chen Mu pointed at the black truffles that had been dug into several pieces, and he was heartbroken. I dug this. Qinzu touched his nose, feeling a little embarrassed. You dug it? Chen Mu was dumbfounded. How could he continue? A lot of words were stuck in his throat, making him feel uncomfortable. But after thinking about it, Chen Mu suddenly reacted. He looked at Qinzu excitedly, as if he was looking at God. Boss, are you saying that you just dug these? Where did you dig them? Are there any truffle-producing areas here? Take a look at the grate first. We'll talk about this later. Qinzu didn't want to continue to attack this poor child, so he let him take a break. If he told him now that the so-called origin was just a small forest, he probably wouldn't be able to bear this blow. Chen Mu nodded, slowly regained his composure, picked up a fist-sized truffle, put it in front of his eyes and looked at it carefully for a moment. Then he put the truffle under his nose and smelled it carefully. Finally, he picked up the truffles that Qinzu had dug into several petals, looked at the patterns inside, and nodded with satisfaction. Boss, the quality is very good, it is considered to be top-grade black truffle. Then he shook his head and said with a puzzled look, I really didn't expect that black truffles can grow in our small place. It's really strange. Then he looked up at Qinzu with an expectant look on his face. Boss, tell me, where is the origin? How is the output? Are you sure you want to know? I may disappoint you. Qinzu touched his nose and reminded kindly. Lin Yu next to him couldn't help rolling his eyes. This hateful man has such a bad taste. Since you said so, I have to listen to it even more. Sure enough, just as she guessed, Qinzu's words made Chen Mu's heart itch even more, and he nodded impatiently. Actually, the origin is in the woods next to it. Seeing Chen Mu's mouth opening wider and wider, Qinzu added another sentence. It seems that the truffles there are almost all dug up. Thanks to Zhexiu, Fengxiai, and Friedrich for their support, and to Zizhui for his support of 500 starting coins. Chapter 417 Eva's New Discovery, Subscription Request. Suddenly, what Chen Mu was about to say was held back again. Seeing the red face, Qinzu was a little worried. Would this handsome 3-star chef die? But he was also innocent. I told him it was not good news, but you still wanted to listen. After a long while, Chen Mu finally caught his breath and looked at Qinzu with resentment. Boss, can we talk without panting? Ahem, well, Qinzu was a little overwhelmed by Chen Mu's look, and he coughed twice, changed the subject and asked. Brother Chen, does the restaurant need these truffles? Of course, Chen Mu came back to his senses and asked quickly. Boss, how much is left? Can all of them be supplied to the restaurant? You know, it's the end of the year, there are many festivals later, and the demand is huge. Well, I can't be sure of the specific output. Qinzu was a little confused by the question. How the hell do I know how much is left? But thinking of what Chen Mu said, he nodded affirmatively. Don't worry, I will definitely leave all the truffles for the restaurant. There is no doubt about that. That's good. That's good. Chen Mu nodded. In fact, he regretted asking that question just now. It was because there were too many stimulations today and he lost his composure. In the end, except for a few left by Qinzu, the remaining more than 30 kilograms of black truffles were packed and taken away by Chen Mu. As for the price, Chen Mu did not say, and Qinzu did not ask, but in the evening, there was an extra $200,000 in his bank card. As for why truffles are charged when it is obviously his own restaurant, this is of course related to the fact that the shares are not owned by one person. Besides, it is easier to do financial accounting in this way. Looking at the time, Lin Yu stood up. Qinzu, since everything is fine, I will also say goodbye. I have to rush back to Boston. Qinzu nodded, took 2 of the remaining black truffles, and handed them to Lin Yu with a smile. Take it. These are your reward. You have helped me all afternoon. This is too expensive. I can't take it. Although Lin Yu stared at the 2 black truffles with shining eyes, she still refused. As she said, these 2 little things were really too expensive. Take it. They are dug from my own field. What's expensive or not? Qinzu didn't wait for her to refuse. He directly grabbed her fair and tender little hand and put the truffle on it. He took the opportunity to pinch it. So smooth and tender. Lin Yu took the 2 black truffles in a hurry. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What? Dug from my own field is not valuable. Can this man be a little richer? As for Qinzu pinching her smooth little hand, she was surprised and ignored it. After seeing Lin Yu and Chen Mu off, Qinzu went back to the sofa and lay down for a while. He had been busy all day and was really a little tired. In the evening, Eva came back and was extremely surprised when she heard about this. Moreover, she thought more than her sister. She had never heard of truffles being produced here before. She also checked the internet and was sure that the soil quality of the truffle-producing area was very different from that here. So what was the reason for all this? She was puzzled. While Shirley was downstairs, playing with the two little huskies with great interest, Kinzu took the opportunity to pull Eva upstairs. At the time of youth and vigor, and having just tasted the taste of meat, he wished to be with a woman every day. This is just like those men and women in love, 24 hours a day, 25 hours a day. As soon as they entered the room, their hot lips pressed together. It seemed that not only he, but also Eva, as a woman, needed it. After nearly an hour of tossing like dry firewood, until Eva couldn't help but beg for mercy, Kinzu let her go. The clouds cleared and the rain stopped. The two of them lay in bed hugging each other. Eva thought of what she had just thought about and told Kinzu about her doubts. Well, now that you mention it, it seems a little strange. Kinzu didn't care much at first, thinking that he was just lucky. Now that he heard Eva's analysis, he also felt a little strange. There must be some reason for this, and it is definitely not just a matter of luck. Yes, Eva twisted her somewhat limp body. I have never heard of truffles being produced here, or in the entire United States. There are only a few places that produce truffles. Is it just a coincidence that this place is one of them? Then where do you think the problem is? Kinzu looked at the woman in his arms curiously. He didn't expect that she had such a careful side. Don't those experts say that foreigners have a careless personality? That bunch of liars. I don't know why either. If I knew where the problem was, I would be rich. Eva shook her head, lifted the quilt, and dragged her tired body to the bathroom. After hearing what Eva said, Kinzu's mind turned involuntarily. Yes, if he knew how to cultivate truffles, wouldn't he be rich? Even if the price is lowered, 1 kilogram of black truffles is $5,000, and 10 kilograms is $50,000. There is at least 1 kilogram under a tree, right? How much does a whole forest cost? Kinzu almost drooled as he calculated. You should also wash up quickly. Shirley must be waiting anxiously downstairs. I really don't know where you get so much energy. Eva's words interrupted Kinzu's meditation. He quickly wiped his saliva and threw those unrealistic ideas behind his mind. Let's find the reason first. Kinzu kept muttering while walking to the bathroom. When the two of them went downstairs, Shirley was indeed a little anxious. Although she didn't say anything, her blank expression showed how bored she was. Why did you take so long? Shirley is getting anxious. Dale on the side complained rarely. It was obvious that she was a little dissatisfied that the two of them went on a secret date while she was left here to accompany the child. Well, be careful next time, be careful next time. Kinzu smiled awkwardly, came to Shirley and picked her up. When the little girl saw Kinzu, her eyes lit up obviously, but she immediately lowered them in grievance. Obviously, not being able to find her uncle just now still caused a lot of damage to her young heart. Kinzu felt a little distressed and regretted what he had done just now. He sat down on the sofa and started to coax her. However, men are like this. Once they get excited, let alone the children, even the king and the father will be useless. But after the passion was vented, he began to regret again. How could he do that just now? Chapter 418 Failed Exploration. The night was so blurry. In the silent and boundless darkness, a pair of eyes emitting cold light moved quickly on the seabed. Kinzu had not controlled the golden python to move on the seabed for several days, which made him a little uncomfortable for a while. While the little girl was asleep, Kinzu quietly controlled the golden python and carried out its first ocean exploration. It had been nearly a month since he got the diary, and the python's activity time on the seabed had increased by an hour. It was time to conduct a preliminary exploration. However, the imagination was beautiful, but the reality hit Kinzu hard. When he set out, Kinzu was full of confidence, but as time passed, his heart gradually cooled down. There was no other reason, the ocean was too big. He thought that he could swim to the vicinity of the destination in an hour, right? But the reality was that he didn't even reach half the distance. Stopping on the reef on the seabed, looking at the bustling and lively seabed in front of him, Kinzu felt like crying but had no tears. His original plan was to rush to the vicinity of the shipwreck and then search for treasure, so that he could further determine the location of the treasure. After all, the seabed is so big, and there is no treasure hunting function to rely on. It is just a small boat. It is like looking for a needle in a haystack to find it. Kinzu is not conscious of being a pig's foot. Whenever he sees those guys, he can encounter those shipwrecks full of treasures by just turning around the seabed. He is endlessly envious. Only those who have been to the bottom of the sea will understand that without roads, landmarks, and instruments, let alone finding a shipwreck, being able to identify the direction is amazing. Alas, there is still not enough time. Kinzu sighed helplessly. After all, he had to reserve time to rush back. Forget it, let's stop here today and try it here. After muttering to himself twice, Kinzu made up his mind, turned on the treasure hunting function, and began his new round of exploration. As time passed, the information of a treasure gradually appeared on the treasure hunting light screen. But after seeing the information about the treasure, Kinzu's face became extremely stiff. He shook his thick and long tail unconsciously a few times. Kinzu was so depressed that he even felt that he must not have checked the almanac before going out today. Damn it, I also know that bluefin tuna is a treasure, but you can't cheat me like this, right? That's right, he just used the treasure hunting technique, and it actually showed a huge bluefin tuna. Damn, it's so unlucky. Kinzu muttered depressedly and decided to return. After all, he didn't drive a fishing boat out, and the dock of the fishing ground was not repaired. If he got a bluefin tuna back inexplicably, wouldn't it scare them? Thinking of the scene at the time, even though Kinzu is so big now, he couldn't help but shiver. Moreover, Kinzu was a little unsure in his heart, because the bluefin tuna was actually more than 6 meters long. Is this still a bluefin tuna? Although Kinzu didn't want to admit it, he couldn't deny that he might not be able to beat the guy on the bottom of the sea. You know, the speed of bluefin tuna on the bottom of the sea is well known. Shaking his head, Kinzu didn't think about this problem anymore. He identified the direction according to the map and rushed home. When Kinzu woke up the next day, it was already past 7 o'clock. He sat up and yawned. He was busy until after 12 o'clock yesterday night and didn't go to bed. He really couldn't get up. Looking around, Shirley had already gotten up. I don't know how Weaver coaxed her up. After getting up and washing up, Kinzu went downstairs and saw the little girl wearing a plain skirt and 2 pigtails, sitting on the sofa with her in her arms. Shirley, why are you up so early? Kinzu smiled and sat down next to her. Uncle, you got up late. The little girl turned around and looked at Kinzu with her big eyes without blinking, then pointed to the wall clock. Look, it's almost 8 o'clock. Kinzu was a little speechless. This is really a hard-working little girl. Why doesn't she sleep in? Touching the little girl's pigtails, Kinzu smiled and asked, Shirley, have you had breakfast? Kinzu thought that the little girl got up so early and must have had breakfast. Who knew that she touched her belly and said aggrievedly, no, Shirley is hungry. Kinzu was stunned and looked at Eva on the side, a little confused. Why? Didn't you make breakfast today? No, breakfast is ready. Eva shrugged helplessly, but your little sweetheart must wait for you to eat together. Kinzu turned his head to look at Shirley. Is that so? Shirley nodded her little head, and the 2 well-combed pigtails also danced with it. Yes, you have to wait for Uncle to eat. We have already eaten. What should Uncle do? Kinzu felt warm in his heart when he heard this. He loved her so much that she knew to wait for him to eat. He didn't say anything, picked up the little girl, and said with a smile, okay, let's go to have breakfast together. Then he strode towards the restaurant. The little girl in his arms also showed a happy smile. She was indeed hungry. But her mother taught her when she was a child that she had to wait for adults to eat and couldn't eat first. Eva looked at the side and was a little puzzled. Isn't it just a meal? Why must she wait for clean? But she didn't say anything. Every country has its own culture. Maybe this is a culture of that mysterious country. Just as Kinzu and the little girl were feasting at the table, the voice of old John suddenly came from outside the door. Coming to the living room, seeing Kinzu still eating in the restaurant, old John took off his cowboy hat and put it aside, smiling and saying hello. Hi, boss. Good morning, are you still eating? Good morning, old John, have you eaten? Do you want to join us? Kinzu finished the milk in the cup, then took a tissue and wiped his mouth, smiling and asked. Old John waved his hand, indicating that he had eaten. Kinzu also wiped Shirley's mouth after she finished eating, and then took her to the living room. Seeing Shirley coming over, old John's sharp eyes showed a rare softness. Hi, little princess, good morning. Shirley was held by Kinzu's hand, raised her head and looked at the old man in front of her. Although she still didn't say anything, she showed a sweet smile. Although there was no response, for old John, this was enough, and the old man who had been through so much joy couldn't help himself. Kinzu smiled and touched the little girl's head. The situation is getting better and better now. He hopes that one day, even if he is not by her side, she will be able to face others bravely. Chapter 419 Halloween Holiday. What's up? Old John, what's up so early in the morning? Kinzu looked at old John opposite him. If the old man had nothing to do, he wouldn't come to him. What made Kinzu feel a little strange was that this old man, who was always vigorous and resolute, actually felt a little embarrassed. Looking at Kinzu's puzzled eyes, old John hesitated for a long time and finally asked, "This is it, boss. What are your plans for Halloween?" Halloween? Is Halloween coming soon? Kinzu was a little surprised. Time passed quickly. Is it the end of October? Yes, boss, tomorrow is Halloween. Seeing that Kinzu didn't have any special reaction, old John coughed twice and reminded, "Boss, how do we arrange Halloween for our ranch? Should we give the cowboys a day off? Give the ranch employees a day off?" Kinzu was in a trance and suddenly felt a little emotional. When will he be able to decide whether to give employees a day off or not? Yeah, old John nodded. He didn't know what his new boss was thinking, so he had to bite the bullet and said, "Halloween is here, and the cowboys on the ranch are a little restless and a little absent-minded when doing things." Hearing what old John said, Kinzu came back to his senses and replied with a smile, "Old John, according to the regulations, we should take a few days off." Old John was a little embarrassed and didn't know what to do. He was afraid that Kinzu would say this. "What's wrong? Is there a problem?" Kinzu was a little confused. "I asked you to come according to the regulations, what else do you want? Isn't it just a few days off? I'm not Yang Leo, can I treat you unfairly?" Seeing Kinzu's somewhat unhappy expression, old John had to explain with a wry smile, "Boss, according to the regulations, we don't have a holiday on Halloween." "What? How is this possible?" Kinzu opened his mouth in surprise, looking at old John who was smiling bitterly on the sofa opposite, with a look of disbelief. "Old man, are you sure you are not kidding?" Even if Kinzu didn't know much about Europe and America, he knew that Halloween was the second largest holiday in Europe and America after Christmas. "You told me there was no holiday." Halloween is a holiday about ghosts, especially Europeans and Americans like it very much. How much do they like it? For example, although the legal date of this holiday is October 31st every year, in fact, from the beginning of October, the atmosphere of the festival is everywhere. The most obvious thing is that all stores will be decorated with spider webs, witches, vampires, skulls, etc. Many people have started to put pumpkin lanterns in front of their doors. This is just like the Chinese New Year, which lasts almost half a month. On this day, many families will have parties, and the food and drinks at the party must be made into strange and bloody appearances. For such a popular holiday, you tell me that they don't have a holiday? How is this possible? It's true, boss. According to the regulations of the US Congress, there is no holiday for Halloween. Although he was helpless, John could only explain with a wry smile. There are only 7 legal holidays in the United States. New Year's Day, President's Day, Memorial Day, Independence Day, Labor Day, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. Apart from these holidays, it depends on the state, or your mood, boss, to decide whether to have holidays. There is no clear regulation. Kinzu was a little dumbfounded. No way. What are these holidays? How come I have never heard of them? What about Valentine's Day? What about Valentine's Day that spoils all the young girls and wives in China? Americans don't have holidays. And what about Easter? Why don't these holidays that I know have holidays? Boss, what Uncle John said is true. Eva, who was standing aside, looked at Kinzu's unbelieving eyes and interjected. However, although there is no regulation on whether to have a holiday for Halloween, most ranches will have 2 days off. Kinzu nodded. He understood what Eva meant. It was different here than in China. In China, the state has mandatory holidays, and even so, except for government departments, companies or private enterprises have to find ways to avoid holidays or give fewer holidays. Here, although the state does not stipulate that those holidays should be given, when the time comes, those bosses have to give holidays. Although there is no explicit regulation, it is all tacitly accepted. Just like Christmas, according to the regulations of Congress, there are only 3 days of holiday for Christmas. But as far as Kinzu knows, which company has more than 2 weeks of holiday for Christmas? Okay, let's do as Eva said, and the cowboys will have 2 days off. Kinzu thought about it, forget it, and follow the rules. He looked up at old John with a happy face and asked, "What day is today?" "Boss, it's the 30th, and tomorrow is Halloween." Old John replied. "Well, then we will have a holiday starting from tomorrow, and we will have 2 days off." Hearing what Kinzu said, old John's weathered face couldn't help but smile. This is not for himself, because his family lives on the ranch, and it doesn't matter to him whether he has a holiday or not. But this is really good news for those single cowboys. I believe those guys will be happy after hearing this. "Thank you, boss. I think those guys will be very happy." Old John sincerely thanked Kinzu. "No need to thank me. This is what I should do." Kinzu waved his hand and his face became serious. "Old John, it's okay to take a holiday, but the people on duty must be arranged." Old John nodded in agreement. "Don't worry, boss, I will arrange these." Kinzu smiled with satisfaction. He was still very relieved about this old man. When old John left with satisfaction, Kinzu looked back at Eva. You didn't remind me during the holiday, which caught me off guard." Eva shrugged helplessly. "Clean, I thought you would know, after all, this is a big holiday." Kinzu was angry. "I didn't go out every day, how could I know? By the way, Eva, is there anything we should pay attention to on Halloween?" Speaking of which, this is really the first time Kinzu celebrates this kind of festival, and in the United States. Just like Eva's idea, Kinzu also has great respect for this kind of foreign festival customs. Belief or not is one thing, but Kinzu still understands the importance of respecting other people's customs. Eva thought for a while before speaking. Clean, there is nothing specific, but according to American customs, most families always buy some pumpkins to entertain the children. There will be strings of ghosts and gods of various forms hanging at the door or in front of the garden. These decorations are made by hollowing out pumpkins and carving various vivid ghost faces on the outside. On Halloween night, there will be children dressed as ghosts, in groups of 2 or 3, carrying small pumpkin lanterns, knocking on the doors of nearby houses to ask for candy. Chapter 420 Supermarket Purchase. Oh? Kinzu looked at Eva with great interest. "So, we have to prepare as well?" Eva nodded. "We need to prepare some things. We also need to go to the supermarket to buy some." "Okay, make a list of what you need, and I'll go buy it." Kinzu readily agreed. He had heard of Halloween many times in China, but he had never experienced it in person. After Eva made a list of things to buy and handed it to him, Kinzu took Shirley and drove the Cadillac to Revere. He didn't feel anything when he was at the ranch, but as soon as the Cadillac entered Revere, a festive atmosphere came over him. On the streets and roads, people in various strange costumes gathered in groups of 3 or 2. And those shops and shopping malls, and even the streets and alleys of Revere, were decorated with lights to celebrate the arrival of the festival. Shirley, who was in the back seat, leaned on the glass, looking outside with great interest, and felt curious about those people in strange costumes. Finally, the little girl couldn't help her curiosity and looked at Kinzu in front of her with curiosity. "Uncle, what are they doing?" "Gay?" Kinzu stopped the car in front of a large supermarket and took Shirley down from the car with a smile. "They are playing. Shirley, do you want to play with them?" Shirley hesitated for a long time, but still shook her head. "I want to play with Uncle." Kinzu smiled and rubbed the little girl's head. The longer he stayed with this girl, the more he felt sorry for her. Let's go in and take a look. There are a lot of things to buy today." Kinzu walked in with the little girl, looking at the list in his hand. Candy, apples, pumpkins, and some messy things. Kinzu suddenly remembered that there were pumpkins planted in his vegetable garden. Why did he need to buy pumpkins? Kinzu took out his cell phone and called Eva. Just as he finished speaking, Eva smiled and said, "Clean, you don't really think your vegetable can grow so fast, do you? How long has it been? How can it be mature?" Kinzu calculated the time in his mind and now he knew it. He smiled and asked, "Have you been to see it?" Eva sat up from the sofa, put on her shoes and walked outside. She was subconsciously curious. "Clean, don't tell me that it's only been a month and the pumpkin you planted is already mature." You'll know if you go and see it." Kinzu hung up the phone and took Shirley to continue walking into the supermarket. Before he took a few steps, the phone in his pocket rang crazily. Kinzu couldn't help but smile. "How is it? Honey, did you go to see it?" Before Kinzu finished speaking, he heard Eva's unbelievable exclamation on the other end of the phone. "Clean, how is it possible? How did you do it? Oh, my God, I haven't been here for only a week, how could this happen? How could this happen?" Kinzu put the phone a little further away from his ear, and waited until Eva calmed down a little, then asked with a smile, "How is it? Honey, do we need to buy more pumpkins?" "Oh, no." Eva waved her hands repeatedly, as if Kinzu could see, and said incoherently, "Clean, we can't buy any more, this is already too much, we definitely can't use it ourselves." After chatting for a few more sentences, Kinzu hung up the phone, and the smirk on his mouth became deeper. "You little brat, do you think you were joking about increasing the growth rate tenfold? Uncle, your smile is so scary." The crisp childish voice of the little girl next to him instantly froze Kinzu's smug expression. Then, the laughter from the side made Kinzu even more unable to extricate himself. Kinzu, who was a little angry, turned around with some dissatisfaction, wanting to see who was so bored to eavesdrop on their conversation. "Hey, Joseph, why are you here?" Kinzu just turned around and saw someone he didn't want to see. The dissatisfied expression on his face disappeared instantly, replaced by a harmless expression. "Ha ha, Clean, of course I'm here just like you, to buy some Halloween supplies." Joseph hugged Kinzu with a big laugh, and there was no trace of it on his face. He glanced at the little girl next to him. "Clean, is this your daughter?" "What a cute little girl." "No, Joseph, this is my little niece, Shirley." Kinzu explained with a smile on his face, then looked at Shirley and said with a smile, "Shirley, call Grandpa, this is Grandpa Joseph." The little girl looked at Kinzu, then looked at Joseph, and finally called out timidly, "Ha ha, this won't work, little girl, you have to be braver in the future, just like you just now." Joseph touched the little girl's head with a teasing expression on his face. Kinzu was afraid that the little girl would be frightened again if he continued talking, so he quickly changed the subject. Looking at Joseph, who was alone, he smiled and said, "Hey, Joseph, did you come here alone? Where's Jack? He's not with you." As soon as he finished speaking, a crisp shout came from the side. "Hey, Clean, what a coincidence to meet you here." Kinzu turned his head and looked in the direction where the voice came from. Who else could it be but little Jack? "Come on, Jack, let me introduce you to a friend," Kinzu said, pulling little Jack over and introducing Shirley to each other. Perhaps because of their similar age, the little girl's attitude towards Jack was much bolder than Joseph's. After shaking hands with him, she also said hello. Kinzu watched them with a smile on his side. After the two of them finished greeting, he pulled little Jack over, scratched his little head, and said before he could protest, "Jack, Shirley is younger than you. You must take good care of your sister in the future." After hearing what Kinzu said, the little guy had no objection. He patted his chest and assured like a man, "Don't worry, Clean, leave it to me, I will definitely protect Sister Shirley." "Well, you are so good. Come on, Uncle will buy you some candy." After that, he smiled and walked in with the two little guys. Seeing this, Joseph had no choice but to follow him, shaking his head and smiling bitterly. "Hey, Clean, I have almost bought everything." Kinzu turned his head and looked. Well, behind Joseph, there was a large shopping cart full of things. But looking at the excited little Jack beside him, Kinzu smiled and said, "Then you go back first, I will send Jack back later." Joseph looked at the pile of things behind him and nodded. "Okay, then you take good care of him, I will go back first." "Goodbye, Joseph, I will be back soon." Jack just turned around and said hello to his father, then turned back to introduce things to Shirley enthusiastically, looking like a little shopping guide in a supermarket. Chapter 421. Pumpkin Lantern. After Joseph left, Kinzu took the two little guys and wandered around the supermarket leisurely. He bought a lot of miscellaneous things, mainly some holiday costumes. But Kinzu bought a lot of candy. The most classic Halloween candy is orange, brown and black packaging, and the shapes are mostly ghosts. Kinzu bought more than 10 kilograms of various candies, and he was still afraid that it was not enough. He thought he was celebrating the Spring Festival in China, and more than 10 kilograms of candy would not be enough at the time. Even though that two little guys who love candy were dumbfounded when they saw so many candies. Because there were too many, it was really a bit dizzy to choose. In the end, Kinzu also bought a ghost costume for the little girl and Jack. The little girl's was a witch costume, and the little Jack was a vampire. "No, Clean, I can't have it." Little Jack put his little hand up and refused. Although he was very envious of the handsome vampire costume, he still remembered what his father said, that he should not easily accept other people's things. In fact, Kinzu thought that little Jack was really good. Although Shirley rarely spoke during the trip, Jack was still happy to introduce the things in the supermarket to her. There were some things that he didn't even know, and he would ask Kinzu for advice, but this did not discourage his enthusiasm. Thinking of this, Kinzu smiled and stuck the clothes into little Jack's arms. "Take it, little guy, this is my reward to thank you for accompanying us to the supermarket." Little Jack hesitated for a while, but still took it, and he was a little confused. Will there be a gift for accompanying me to the supermarket for a while? Then, should I ask Joseph for some gifts in the future? Kinzu didn't know that his unintentional action would bring a lot of trouble to Joseph. After he paid the bill at the checkout counter, he let the two guys into the car. The little girl sat in her exclusive child seat as usual, but little Jack, who turned 10 this year, could already sit in the front row alone, otherwise Kinzu would really have a hard time. After helping little Jack fasten his seatbelt, Kinzu slowly started the car. The Cadillac drove smoothly on the streets of Revere. The residents of the town, whether adults or children, were dressed in various ghost costumes and strolled on the streets. On the busy streets, you can see that Halloween ghost decorations are hung everywhere. Many department stores are also busy piling up gifts and clothes for the festival in the windows, attracting many passers-by to stop and watch. Supermarkets and street markets also put pumpkins of all sizes for sale for citizens to buy home to decorate their homes or make pumpkin lanterns. "Clean, will you come to the parade tomorrow night?" Little Jack in the co-pilot seat suddenly asked. "Parade? What parade?" Kinzu was a little confused. Little Jack turned around and looked at Kinzu in confusion. "Clean, don't you know? The Halloween parade organized by the town." Kinzu was a little embarrassed. He really didn't know that since he moved into the ranch, he really didn't interact with the people in the town. This won't work. Although it can't be said that you have to please these guys, you still have to build a good relationship. "Tomorrow? What time does it start in the evening? I'll see if I'm free to come." Little Jack held his chin and thought for a while, then said uncertainly, "It seems to start at 7 o'clock in the evening. It'll be over in an hour." "Okay, let's go together tomorrow." Kinzu smiled and agreed. Anyway, it was still early, so he took Shirley out for a walk. Soon, the Cadillac arrived at Joseph's ranch. Kinzu didn't get out of the car. He waved to Joseph and turned away. He really didn't know how to face this old man. He always felt that he seemed to know about the affair between him and Mobica, but he didn't say it out. This really made Kinzu feel a little unsure. The unknown always makes people feel a little scared. If he really sorted out the matter and said everything, Kinzu wouldn't be so panicked. But the less he said, the more Kinzu felt uneasy. Shaking his head, Kinzu smiled bitterly in his heart. Perhaps this is what is called a guilty conscience. Back at the ranch, Eva was holding a few large pumpkins at the door and fiddling with them. Seeing Kinzu coming back, she couldn't suppress her curiosity and came over. "Clean, tell me how you did it. This is amazing." Kinzu smiled and scratched her straight nose. "Didn't I tell you? This is a good seed. What else do you think? I don't know magic. Is it really like this?" Eva muttered a few words, but if Kinzu didn't say anything, she had no good solution. Kinzu ignored her doubts and came to the front. Looking at the several large pumpkins that had just been picked on the ground, he asked curiously, "What are you going to do?" Eva followed Kinzu and walked over. She didn't think about those things anymore. She picked up a carved pumpkin and put it in front of Kinzu. "Look, I'm making a pumpkin lantern." "Pumpkin lantern?" Kinzu's curiosity was immediately aroused. He simply handed the things in the car to Dale and Linyu, who came over, and followed Eva to see how she made a pumpkin lantern. Linyu just came forward and wanted to discuss with Kinzu about the Halloween holiday, but before she could open her mouth, she was sent by Kinzu to carry things. The angry girl with glasses gritted her teeth, stamped her feet, and went to help Dale angrily, while in her heart she scolded this stinky man who didn't know how to be gentle with women. It's okay for such a beautiful woman like her to come to him and not show gentlemanly manners, but now he actually asked her to do hard work. This is really intolerable. But thinking that she is still working for him, Linyu had to swallow her anger, who made her take someone's hand short. Kinzu didn't care about the thoughts of this girl with glasses. In his opinion, this girl is good in every way, but she is too arrogant, which makes Kinzu want to tease her. After sending her to work, Kinzu came to Eva and watched her make a pumpkin lantern. Eva didn't care about Kinzu's presence, but taught Kinzu how to make a pumpkin lantern with great interest. Picking up a big round pumpkin, Eva smiled and said, "Clean, first, you have to use a pen to draw the shape you want on the pumpkin. Look, just like that." Eva picked up the pen beside her and started drawing on the big pumpkin. After a while, with Eva's skillful hands, a ghost face was drawn by her. Kinzu watched with great interest. He couldn't help but ask curiously, "Then what? What else do I need to do?" More updates, Langzi, and fellow book friends, don't forget to vote while you are growing the book. Si este escuchando esta novela en un canal distinto a mundo fanfic novelas, significat lo descarga and y subir en cines fuerzos invitamos cordialmente a visitar nuestro canal. Mundo fanfic novelas all encontras la versión original de esta historia y podrás explorar muchas otras novelas de diversos narradores. Te esperamos para sumergirte en un mundo de novelas increíbles. Chapter 422. Pumpkin Harvest. Haha. Eva laughed softly. "It's very simple, look." As she said that, she cut off the top of the pumpkin and then hollowed out the whole pumpkin. "Look, now you should understand how to do it, right?" I understand. Kinzu nodded quickly. If he still didn't understand, he would be a fool. Sure enough, just as he thought, Eva picked up a knife and began to move according to the drawn ghost face. After a while, a lifelike ghost face shape was made by Eva. Looking at her masterpiece, Eva clapped her hands with satisfaction. "Okay, we just need to light a candle inside and cover it with the top cover, and a pumpkin lantern is done." Kinzu nodded and praised. "Not bad, I didn't expect you to be able to do these." "What's this?" Eva shrugged. "Clean, these are things you have played with since childhood. No matter how stupid you are, you can learn them." Kinzu thought so too. After all, it was their traditional festival. It was something very rare in his eyes, but for them, it was something they had to experience every year. "Clean, we have too many pumpkins." Eva sighed and looked at the vegetable field. "Do you need to ask Uncle John and the others to help deal with them?" "Deal with them? How?" Kinzu didn't react for a while. "Just give them to the cowboys." Eva turned her head and looked at Kinzu. "Anyway, everyone will buy them for the holidays, and we can't eat all of them." Okay, Kinzu didn't care. Anyway, there were so many vegetable fields. Then let them come and pick them if they need them. Anyway, there are plenty. After saying that, Kinzu squatted down and picked up a big pumpkin. He wanted to experiment with it himself. Looking at Kinzu's actions, Eva smiled and handed him the pen and knife. "Clean, you'll leave this to you. I'll use these to make snacks." Eva picked up the pumpkin pulp on the side and stood up. "Clean, you have to keep some too. These are all ingredients for making pumpkin pie. They can't be wasted." Kinzu nodded, indicating that he understood. He was just feeling sorry that such a good pumpkin was wasted. It turned out that they had already planned it. Just when Kinzu was busy, old John drove the old pickup truck. It stopped at the door of the villa. The door opened, and old John got out of the car with Ryan. Seeing Kinzu, he smiled and greeted. "Hi, boss, are you busy?" Kinzu heard this, raised his head from the exquisite pumpkin lantern in front of him, and also smiled and greeted the two. Seeing that they were wearing gloves and carrying sacks, they looked fully armed, and smiled and said, "Since you are here, pick them yourself. They are all in the vegetable field." The two nodded, thanked him, and walked towards the vegetable field. Kinzu ignored them and continued to squat on the ground to continue his unfinished business. "Uncle, you are so amazing." The little girl looked at Kinzu with admiration. It was amazing that his uncle could make such beautiful things. Kinzu looked at the crooked melons and cracked dates he made, and then looked at the finished products that stood out from the crowd. His old face couldn't help but blush. Come, Uncle will teach Shirley how to make a pumpkin lantern, okay?" Kinzu, who felt a little guilty after being praised by the little girl, quickly changed the subject and decided to drag the girl into the water. The little girl didn't know that her uncle was looking for a bottom-ranked one. When she heard that her uncle was willing to teach her how to make a pumpkin lantern, she almost jumped up with joy. However, when Kinzu looked at the pumpkin lantern made by the little girl under his teaching, he had the urge to hit his head against the wall. Is this the difference between a genius and a mediocre person? Come, dear Shirley, I'll give you the last few to do. Be careful. After assigning the tasks to Shirley with an embarrassed look on his face, Kinzu stood up and walked towards the vegetable garden. He could no longer face the innocent eyes of the little girl. Unintentional harm is the deepest harm. Daha and Xiaohe lay on the ground with their tongues sticking out. They looked up at the two of them in a daze, not knowing whether they should follow. But before they hesitated for long, little Jerry next to them jumped up and followed. The two looked at each other and climbed back again. Kinzu hadn't taken a few steps when he felt something grabbing his trouser legs. He stopped and saw that little Jerry was looking at him pitifully. "Come up." Kinzu pointed to his shoulder and motioned to the little guy. Little Jerry became excited all of a sudden. He was originally going to take a ride, but now it seems that the boss is going to take him to be corrupted. That's great. Taking little Jerry to the vegetable garden, Kinzu felt a little confused when he looked at the large area of lush greenery. What's going on? When did he plant so many things in his vegetable garden? Oh my god, boss, you really take good care of this place. Seeing Kinzu come in, old John stood up and praised excitedly. Yes, even if the ranch uses it for a year, it is enough. Ryan also agreed. Ha, these are all the credit of Lori Imbraman. Kinzu smiled and shrugged. I don't pay much attention to this place. He was not being polite. Since the vegetable garden was established, he has never asked much about it. It was the women in the ranch who took care of it. And he would only come here when needed, and he would leave in a hurry without paying much attention to the situation of the vegetable garden. Seeing the prosperous scene of the vegetable garden today, Kinzu also had some thoughts in his mind. These are all pure green and pollution-free foods. Isn't it a bit wasteful to supply them to the cowboys on the ranch? However, Kinzu still knew the limit and did not express his thoughts in front of them, otherwise he would not know what these guys were thinking. After entering the vegetable garden, Kinzu went to help them pick pumpkins. As for little Jerry, well, look over there, yes, right there. In a green vegetable field, little Jerry was holding a bright red tomato with his two little paws, and was destroying it fiercely. The intense scene even scared Kinzu. My goodness, his whole head was almost stuck in the tomato, and he was not afraid of choking. After being busy for a while, after little Jerry happily finished 2 big tomatoes, plus some fresh fruits and vegetables, Kinzu and the other two finally completed the task. Looking at the pumpkin field that was more than half cleared, Kinzu felt relieved. Although pumpkins are delicious, too many of them can also kill people. Kinzu clapped his hands, stretched his waist, looked at the bags of pumpkins on the ground, shook his head and smiled bigly. Okay, old John, it seems we have to run 2 more times. Old John smiled and teased nonchalantly. It's nothing, life lies in exercise, isn't it? Chapter 423 The Cowboys are on holiday, subscription request. Kinzu was relieved when he helped old John and the other man to load the pumpkins onto the pickup truck. They got quite a lot this time. 1 sack could hold 5 pumpkins, and they got more than a dozen sacks. However, these look like a lot now, but when the cowboys went back and shared them, each of them would have only a few left. At noon, they had a pumpkin feast made by Eva. In addition to pumpkin pie, there were various snacks and delicious dishes, which were made exquisitely. However, these sweets that seemed good to Europeans and Americans did not taste so good to Kinzu. Except that they felt good at the beginning, Kinzu could not eat them in the end. After all, if you eat too much sweets, you will always get tired of them. Fortunately, Eva also fried steak and salad, which avoided the embarrassment of Kinzu making instant noodles by himself. In the afternoon, Lin Yu finally caught the opportunity and blocked Kinzu in the house. What are you going to do? Kinzu pretended to be scared, which made Lin Yu roll his eyes. Boss Keen, Lin Yu's tone was filled with deep resentment. You also know that it's Halloween. Do you think we should stop the project for 2 days? Kinzu pretended to be silent for a while, until Lin Yu's eyes became more and more lost. Then he smiled and said, Lin Yu, didn't I give this project to you? As long as it is completed according to the contract time, there will be no problem. After hearing Kinzu's words, Lin Yu breathed a sigh of relief. It was easy to say, it was all given to us. If I didn't say hello to you, I don't know how you would find fault with us. Looking at Lin Yu's back as she left, Kinzu smacked his lips. This is really a charming little goblin. But now is not the time to think about these things. The cowboys will be on holiday tonight. He wants to go and see the cattle to make sure that these guys don't mess with them. After asking Eva to take good care of Shirley at home, Kinzu took Dale and rode to the grazing area. Hi, boss, you're here. From a distance, Rulia, who was in charge of herding, saw Kinzu and said with a smile, thank you for the pumpkin. Kinzu waved his hand. How is it? Have you arranged it for the evening? The cowboys have all gone back, don't let anything go wrong. Don't worry, boss, absolutely no problem. Seeing that Kinzu still had some doubts, Rulia explained with a smile. Ryan and I are not going back, and there are also John and Will, so boss, you don't have to worry at all." Kinzu nodded in relief. Yes, these 4 guys are experienced old men, and there is absolutely no problem in settling the ranch. However, although he believed that several guys could handle it, Kinzu still waited here until the evening. It was not until all the cattle and sheep were put into the pen that Kinzu dragged his tired body and took Dale, whose expression did not change at all, back to the villa. Entering the room, looking at the table full of delicious food, Kinzu had no appetite. After being in the United States for so long, this is the first time that he has truly experienced the life of a cowboy. The feeling he had was 1 word. Tired, 2 words. Really tired, and 3 words. Really fucking tired. Originally, in his impression, the life of a cowboy should be extremely comfortable. Riding a tall horse, with the blue sky and white clouds, strolling among the light green grass. Just wave the whip a few times, and the cattle and sheep will act according to their ideas. But what is the truth? Grazing is not easy, and the cattle and sheep are not honest. After finally getting these guys into the cattle pen, they still have to prepare fodder for the night. All this makes Kinzu, a college student who has never suffered much at home since he was a child, feel exhausted. Clean, take a break first and drink some soup. Eva put a bowl of appetizer soup in front of Kinzu and said with concern, "You too, don't do it if you are tired. After all, you are the boss, and no one will say anything." Kinzu shook his head weakly and said nothing. "It doesn't mean that you are the boss. Either you don't do it, and leave it to the employees. But since you have done it, you must see it through to the end. You're already too busy, and if you leave it halfway done, how will your employees see you? Although they don't say it, they will definitely despise themselves in their hearts, which is a big blow to the prestige of a boss." Turning his head to look at Dale, who was holding a plate and eating happily next to him, Kinzu was so envious. This girl was in good health. After drinking a bowl of sour and spicy appetizer soup, Kinzu finally regained some appetite, picked up chopsticks and started to eat. "I consumed a lot today, I need to make up for it." The next day, Kinzu got up very early. There was no other way, the cowboys were on holiday, and he, as a boss, had to take over. Besides, he thought it was not bad, it was considered exercise. Looking at Shirley, who was woken up by him, Kinzu gently kissed her on the forehead. "Be good, go back to sleep, Uncle will call you later." I don't know if she heard what Kinzu said. The little girl turned over and went back to sleep. Kinzu entered the bathroom to wash up quietly, then raised his hand to check the time. It was only 5 o'clock in the morning. When he came downstairs, Eva had already prepared breakfast and was eating with Dale. "Clean, why did you get up so early?" Eva looked at Kinzu in surprise. "He was so tired yesterday, why did he get up so early today? Aren't the cowboys on vacation? I'll go help." Kinzu smiled and sat down at the dining table. Eva got up to help Kinzu prepare breakfast, and smiled and advised, "We're enough over there, you should go back to sleep for a while." Kinzu shook his head and couldn't help yawning, but still insisted, "It's okay, just treat it as exercise." Eva smiled, didn't say anything else, handed the fried eggs to Kinzu, and went to prepare sandwiches. The 3 chatted and laughed while eating breakfast. Kinzu ended upstairs to wake up Daha and Xiaohe again, and told the 2 little guys to keep an eye on Shirley. He was not worried that Shirley would be in any danger. He just asked the 2 little guys to play with Shirley to save the little girl from being bored. Because, whether it was the golden python entrenched in the woods next to it, or Haha and Pape hovering in the sky, they would not let strangers break into the villa so easily. After making arrangements, the 3 of them went to the stable together. As soon as Kinzu entered, Xiaobai found him and neighed happily. Kinzu smiled and came to the front of its room, looking at the excited Xiaobai, reaching out and gently stroking its big head. Eva picked up the brush on the side, looked at this scene, and said with a smile, "Clean, today's task is not easy. So many horses need to be taken care of." "Okay, I know, let's start now." Kinzu took the brush handed over by Eva and smiled and walked into the compartment where Xiaobai was. Chapter 424 Busy morning. After working for more than an hour, Kinzu and his 2 companions finally finished cleaning the 30 horses in the stable. This is really a tiring job. Kinzu stretched his body and felt his back ache. He turned his head and looked at Eva curiously, and asked, "Who did these jobs before?" "In the past, whoever rode the horse was responsible. If no one rode, my sister and I would take care of it together." Eva smiled. After all, she had been doing this job for many years. Although the workload today was a bit large, she didn't feel anything special. Kinzu curled his lips and wanted to ask loudly, is the physique of Westerners really stronger than that of Orientals? Why don't these two girls feel tired at all? Just when Kinzu thought that there was nothing to do in the stable, he saw Eva and Dale took out a set of work clothes from the stable warehouse and put them on. And they also put on something similar to a gas mask. What are you doing? Kinzu looked at the two girls curiously. Eva waved her hand. Clean, you go out first, we clean up the horse manure. Kinzu was stunned. Clean up the horse manure? When he was wondering, he saw Eva and Dale, two girls, walking to the back of the stable without hesitation. Kinzu was a little curious at this time, and he also wanted to see how it was cleaned, so he followed. As soon as he entered, Kinzu's curious expression instantly turned blue and purple. Kinzu was stunned there, his mind was groggy and a little confused. Maybe 2 seconds, or maybe 5 seconds. In short, in a very short time, Kinzu turned around and ran out. It wasn't until he ran out of the cubicle and came to the green grass pasture that Kinzu stopped and breathed in the fresh air. Damn it, I'm suffocating. Kinzu panted heavily. The smell in there was really too bad. No wonder those two guys had to wear gas masks. After waiting outside for a long time, the two women finally came out. Does this have to be cleaned like this every day? Kinzu looked at Eva and asked with some distress. Of course, Eva gathered her hair as if nothing had happened, and asked with a smile. What else do you think? It's not that easy to be a cowboy. Changed people. Kinzu shook his head and said decisively. Leave the stable to others to take care of it. You can just let it graze when you have nothing to do. You don't have to do these things. But, Eva hesitated, but the cattle pen has to be taken care of like this too. They probably can't handle it. If they can't handle it, then recruit someone else. Kinzu's words were full of domineering and unyielding. What a joke. After all, she is his woman. Kinzu is not so hard-hearted as to let her do that kind of hard work every day. Okay, I'll tell Uncle John. Seeing Kinzu's resolute expression, Eva shrugged helplessly and compromised. However, a warm feeling suddenly surged in her heart. Yes, there are choices. Who would be willing to do such tiring and dirty work every day? It's just that cowboy work is like this, and she can't refuse. Kinzu smiled with satisfaction. He certainly couldn't marry her, so after she followed him, he certainly couldn't let her be so tired. Otherwise, why would someone follow you? The three of them didn't go back to the villa, but rode on their horses and ran towards the cattle pen. When they arrived at the cattle pen, Ryan and Little John were busy cleaning the cattle pen, while Old John and Will were watching the cattle that had just been released in the pasture not far away. Seeing Kinzu come in, the two came up to him. Hey, boss, why are you here so early today? Old John rode on his horse, looking at Kinzu with a smile on his face. It didn't look like he was an old man in his 50s. Of course I'm here to help, Kinzu said with a smile, then turned to look at Will next to him and asked, Will, why don't you go back to accompany your wife and daughter? Will shook his head with a happy smile. I'll go back after I get off work. They are all in Boston, not far away. Kinzu smiled and said nothing more, but it can be seen that Will is a good employee. In the United States, few employees will take the initiative to work overtime for you. Sometimes they're unwilling to work overtime even if you pay them. Not to mention taking the initiative to work overtime. Since Kinzu and his friends came, Old John gave the cattle to them and took Will to clean the cattle pen. Although he didn't know how far Eva and Dale's relationship with the boss had reached, he would not let them do any hard work just because they were juniors. They were busy until after 9 o'clock, and then they cleaned the cattle pen. After they rested for a while and took over the cattle, Kinzu took the two women back to the villa. When they arrived at the villa, as soon as they walked into the living room, Kinzu saw Shirley sitting on the sofa, looking at him pitifully. The little girl may have just woken up not long ago. Her hair was messy, her eyes were still a little hazy, she was wearing pajamas and holding Daha, sitting on the sofa and looking at him pitifully. My dear Shirley, what's wrong? Are you hungry? Kinzu walked up to her distressedly and picked up the little girl. As for Daha, he was directly pushed aside by him. The little girl also hugged her uncle tightly with both hands. She had long forgotten the good friend who had been accompanying her just now. She looked at Kinzu pitifully and said, Uncle, Shirley is hungry. Be good, let's go, wash our faces first, and then eat. At this time, Kinzu didn't feel tired at all. He walked upstairs holding Shirley, and didn't forget to turn around and ask Eva to get some food. Daha and Xiaohe, who were ignored by the two, held their little stomachs and groaned aggrievedly beside the sofa. Are these two unscrupulous owners just killing the donkey after it has done its work? Eva couldn't stand it anymore. She really liked these two idiots. Just because of their good looks, she couldn't bear to mistreat them. She got some beef from the kitchen, cooked it, and put it on the two little guys' plates. Now, the little guys were excited and ran over happily. The fragrant beef was their favorite. When they got upstairs, Qinzhu helped the little girl wash her face. As for the messy hair, well, just pretend you didn't see it. Professional matters should be left to professionals. When Qinzhu came to the restaurant with Shirley in his arms, Eva had already fried 2 poached eggs and the milk was already heated. Maybe because she was really hungry, the little girl didn't hesitate to pick up a poached egg and started eating it. Chapter 425 An Unexpected Meeting. Looking at Shirley's messy hair, Eva rolled her eyes charmingly at Qinzhu. You were just taking her to wash? You don't even know how to take care of her. Qinzhu gladly accepted Eva's silver. What care? Anyway, you'll have to do it in the end. Why should I waste my time? Just as Qinzhu thought, after the little girl had eaten and drunk enough, she was taken upstairs by Eva and dressed up again. However, to Qinzhu's surprise, in the afternoon, Mobica's Ford SUV drove to the door of the villa. Looking at the familiar white SUV, Qinzhu looked at Eva with a guilty conscience, and it turned out that she was looking at him. For a moment, even Qinzhu, who was thick-skinned, was a little embarrassed. Well, Eva, Mobica is here, I'll go see. After saying that, he fled in panic under her teasing eyes. When he arrived at the door, he looked at Mobica who had just gotten out of the car, and little Jack who had gotten out of the passenger seat. Just as he was about to speak, he saw that the door of the back seat had also been opened. Fuck, could it be that the whole family is here to call for justice? The first thought in Qinzhu's mind was that Joseph had come to his door. However, when Qinzhu saw clearly the woman who'd got out of the back seat of the car, he would rather Joseph had come to his door. Onid, why are you here? Is the school on holiday too? Looking at Onid who was looking at him with a smile not far away, Qinzhu felt a headache. What? Qin, don't you welcome me to be your guest? Onid looked at Qinzhu, and her smile immediately turned into a sad face. No, why do you think so? Of course I welcome you to visit me. Qinzhu waved his hands repeatedly, and finally came to Onid, hugged her gently, and whispered in her ear, I wish you could live here every day. It would be more convenient, wouldn't it? Qinzhu was fine at first, and Onid didn't have any special reaction, but when she heard the last sentence, her face turned red. Fortunately, she was of Latin American descent, and her skin was not as white as that of white people, so she was not discovered by others. After settling on it, Qinzhu looked at Mobica and asked in confusion, You are not at home with Joseph, how do you have time to come here? Mobica shrugged and casually threw the car keys in his hand, It's not my fault. Little Jack insisted on coming here. He said he was looking for a little girl to play with, so I followed him to see. Yes, Uncle Qinzhu, where is Shirley? I came to play with her. Little Jack raised the things in his hand and said, I also brought her toys. Let's play together. Qinzhu looked at this brat with a headache. Why did he become so unlovable now? However, now is not the time to talk about these things. Qinzhu had to smile and walked into the villa with the two girls. As soon as he entered the door, little Jack saw Shirley and ran over excitedly. Shirley, look, I brought you something fun today. Shirley turned her eyes away from the TV and stared at the Barbie doll in little Jack's hand, looking very curious. At this time, little Jack also knew about Shirley's situation. He didn't say anything to her, nor did he express dissatisfaction. Instead, he became more enthusiastic. For the little guy, since he went home and listened to Joseph's instructions, he felt that this sister was very pitiful. So today he pestered this sister to send him over. He also used his pocket money to buy a gift. He must make this poor sister happy. Qinzhu didn't know what the little guy was thinking. Seeing him accompany Shirley so patiently, his impression of this boy changed greatly. As soon as Mobica entered the house, she greeted Eva and introduced Onid to Weaver. She had a good impression of the sisters who lived with Qinzhu. After all, they were neighbors in a small town and had known each other since childhood. The three women gathered together and chatted enthusiastically, and even Dale could interject from time to time. On the contrary, Lee, the owner, was ignored and was left alone on the sofa. Looking at the 4 big foreign horses with different styles, Qinzhu felt itchy in his heart. Damn it, just wait for me. Qinzhu thought about it for a while, and finally couldn't help it. He went upstairs and dragged Onid. Come on, Onid, I have something to discuss with you. After saying that, Kinzu went upstairs. Onid didn't doubt him, and thought that Kinzu really wanted to see her, so she followed Kinzu upstairs. Mobuka felt that something was wrong, but she didn't think it was wrong, so she just watched the two of them go upstairs quietly. It wasn't until she heard a faint woman's exclamation from upstairs that she reacted and covered her mouth in shock. Oh my god! It's still broad daylight, and more importantly, there are 3 people downstairs. Staring at the upstairs in disbelief, Mobuka muttered to himself, or do these two have a relationship with him? Thinking of this, Mobuka couldn't help but look at Eva and Dale. Eva dodged a little embarrassedly, but Dale looked at her calmly for a while. Now, Mobuka knew in her heart that the Chinese man she had taken a fancy to was really extraordinary. In the bedroom upstairs, Kinzu waited for Onid to went to the door and locked the door. When Onid reacted, before she could scream, she was blocked by Kinzu's big mouth. After a long time, Onid was kissed so hard that she couldn't breathe. At this time, she had forgotten that this was Kinzu's bedroom and that there were others downstairs. She seemed to have returned to her own little world, responding to Kinzu's demands frantically. I don't know how long it took, maybe 10 minutes, or maybe an hour, and footsteps finally came from the stairs. Onid's hair was a little messy, her clothes were a little messy, her face was still with a strange blush, and her steps were a little staggering. Coming to the sofa, Onid showed a satisfied smile. Mobuka, Kin asked you to go up. He has something to talk to you about. Mobuka did not refuse, and walked up in a trance, and no one knew what she was thinking. But at this time, Dale and Eva couldn't sit still, and wanted to get up and leave. Onid, the guest, was here, and they couldn't leave her alone in the living room, right? But if they didn't leave, Eva felt a little uneasy. She was vaguely worried that the bad guy would ask her to go up as well. No, he definitely wouldn't. Thinking of this, Eva couldn't help but shook her head. He had come twice, how could he still have the energy? Fin DS capture much as great as Peluga has to L final. No SE Olvid indeed all like Busgasms contendo exclusive YXO in Medito. Siascrabata news to Patreon. Rukurada, card alike, Siascripsino Donaking knows anima continued. Great as a Todos nos vemos on Elpsmovdo.